Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is May 13th, 2026, and today we have one of my favorite types of Mormon Stories interviews. We're interviewing an ex-member of another cult or high-demand religion, and we're covering a high-demand religion or cult that we've never covered before on Mormon Stories, and it's bigger and more powerful and significant, I doubt richer, but definitely bigger and maybe even more powerful or significant than the Mormon Church. Definitely more claimed members. Today we are going to be covering in a two-part episode the Seventh-day Adventist Church or movement. It's known as the biggest church you've never heard of before, which I thought was kind of interesting. They claim 25 plus million members worldwide, as I understand it. They were founded around the same time that the Mormon Church was founded in the United States. They have, I found, several really significant and meaningful similarities between the Mormon Church and its culture and its heritage and, its own traditions. We're so lucky, so fortunate to have in studio a very vocal sort of activist speaking out against the problems with the Seventh-day Adventist Church and its culture. Her name is Melissa Duge Spiers, and she's here all the way from California. Hey, Melissa.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us.
So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're really thrilled. And I want to just start by saying you've got a book out.
I do.
Tell us about your book.
Holy Disobedience. Let me make sure it's in frame.
Yeah.
Sex, Sin, and Secrets in the biggest church no one knows, that being the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It just came out about 5-6 weeks ago and details my upbringing as a fourth generation Seventh-day Adventist and then leaving and all the problems that high control religion give you that you think you escaped when you left, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to get into it. So thanks for joining us. Mm-hmm. I think it's worth noting just really quickly that for our audience, that this is one of my favorite types of series on Mormon Stories Podcast. We have, in the past, we've covered Scientologists multiple times, Jehovah's Witnesses multiple times, Orthodox Judaism, 2x2s. We love covering other high-demand religions or cults as, a way to learn about other traditions. We know that over half of our audience has never been Mormon these days. So it's a way to give representation to other groups that are interested in Mormon Stories Podcast. It's also a really fun way to see your own tradition through the lens of someone else's. So I'm excited. This is the first time we've covered Seventh-day Adventists. We've had lots of requests to do this over the years. So again, check out our other episodes as well. But Melissa, thanks for being our first Seventh-day Adventist.
I love it. Happy to be here. Happy to represent, so to speak.
There's always like this combination, excitement and darkness to the types of things we do. Precise. Yeah, we're excited to talk about your trauma today.
Religious trauma for hours.
Anyway, the other thing I'll just say is when we do these series, instead of having 8-hour episodes, we decided it makes most sense to cover them in two parts. So part one of today is going to be kind of the history of the Seventh-day Adventist movement and their doctrine and theology and culture and practices as its own entity. And then we'll end part one, and then we'll start up part two with Melissa's story, from start to finish, including her faith crisis and her deconstruction and reconstruction after. That will be part two. Mm-hmm. So that's what you have in store. So make sure and get both parts. Anything, other than that, Melissa, other than letting people know about your book, anything you want to say before we begin?
I don't believe so. Book and where to find me and all of that, I think we'll probably cover again at the end, probably. Sure. And otherwise, I'm just super excited. I'm really excited to hear what you've found out about the similarities between Mormons and Adventists. I have a few to talk about, but this is going to be fun.
Well, hopefully it won't be annoying to the viewers and listeners, but that's kind of part of what I do in the episode is, as Melissa tells the history and the doctrine and the theology, I'll be saying, yep, that's similar to Mormonism and here's how versus not. But hopefully most of the time people tend to value and appreciate that. Hopefully that will that will be the case today as well.
Absolutely.
All right. So I guess it's fair to say that Seventh-day Adventist is a Christian tradition.
It is, yeah. They would call themselves just a standard Protestant Christian organization. I call them a lot of other things, but
well, where do they begin?
Well, I had to go back actually and do a lot of research about the Adventist organization because I left at 18. So I didn't, spend a whole lifetime in the theology. So this is going to be fun. All the research is fresh in my brain. So they began in the United States in the mid-1800s as part of the Millerite movement.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was William Miller had decided from the Daniel and Revelation stuff in the Bible that he knew exactly when Jesus was coming back, and he was going to come back in October of 1844. And clearly he missed the bus or something because he never showed up. And
did he?
Or did he?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it was called The Great Disappointment.
It was called The Great Disappointment, exactly.
Well, one thing that's just super interesting is Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, was killed in June of 1844. So your church, the Great Disappointment happens within 3 months of Joseph Smith's death, which is parallelism, but I found that
that's fascinating.
Did Miller? Do you know if Miller had a church before? Was he just like this lone, religious thinker writer?
I should have done more William Miller research before I even. As far as I know, he was just. There was that whole spiritual awakening stuff that was happening there. Joseph Smith was part of it, and all of that. And as far as I know, William Miller was just kind of part of that, like tent revivals and things like that. But I don't know that he had a set doctrine and church and that kind of stuff. So after his great disappointment, then of course everybody split into factions, finger pointing, all that stuff of like who was wrong and how, and people had literally sold all of their possessions and divested themselves of their homes and everything because they thought they were going to heaven. Can I just say that you probably know this? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Latter-day Saints part is that Joseph Smith was a millennialist prophet as well. So Joseph Smith was also relying on or believing in or trading on this idea of Jesus is coming anytime. So both of our traditions were millennialistic. We're end times cults, basically.
What's that?
End times cults.
Kind
people
of,
call them. Yeah, definitely.
So that's a pretty big thing. And Joseph Smith did predict that Jesus Christ would come sort of within his lifetime.
Yeah.
But he didn't necessarily set a date to set people up for disappointment. There's some questioning about that, but that's one very huge similarity
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ellen White, the prophet, which we'll go into much later, but she also learned the Joseph Smith trick of not setting a date anymore, just saying within my lifetime, because that's handy.
Yeah.
But in the wake of the Great Disappointment, a bunch of little factions started to establish themselves as churches, and one of them was the Seventh-day Advent movement. It was a man named Joseph Bates and John Harvey Kellogg, the Kellogg cereal guy, and a woman, Ellen White, and her husband, James White. And Ellen White became kind of the figurehead and the organizing centerpiece of the church very quickly because she claimed to have the spirit of prophecy. And the Adventists believe that is one of the signs of being the true remnant church. And I know the Mormons call themselves something very similar. What do they call themselves?
The idea of a living prophet that prophesies, that's central. And Joseph Smith, of course, was our founding prophet with the ability to prophesy. You guys
call yourself the Mormons called themselves the Restored Church?
Restorationists, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So similar.
Yeah.
Again, lots of fun similarities.
And Joseph had a ton of failed prophecies, by the way, but he was viewed as the prophet.
Ellen White had many failed prophecies. Yes, exactly.
What do you know about her upbringing?
I love talking about this. So when she was 9, she got hit in the head with a rock.
Where was she living? What state? Do you know?
She was on the East Coast. She was in Maine for a while, I know, and I think Massachusetts for a while. I'm kind of unclear as to where exactly the rock throwing happened.
Okay.
But basically the Victorian equivalent of a mean girl, didn't like her in 4th grade or whatever and threw a rock and hit her in the head. And major like temporal frontal lobe injury. She was in a coma for a long time. She had lifelong seizures afterward, fainting spells, all of this stuff, which people now kind of recognize, I think, generally as temporal lobe epilepsy, I believe, which comes with a lot of personality changes often, which she displayed all of, but she interpreted them as God. And now there's even more, since I think the 90s, there's been a diagnosis for frontal lobe injuries called Geschwind syndrome. And it comes with this list. I'm just going to read it here because it's very interesting. List of symptoms: hypergraphia, writing all the time, hyperreligiosity, hyposexuality, total disinterest in sex and vilifying it. Let's see, heightened emotion and moralism, intense emotional strong moral compass, and sometimes rigid, humorless personality, and viscosity and circumstantiality, verbose, repetitive, and getting stuck on topics. Ellen White displayed every single one of those from the moment. What's that condition called again? Geschwind syndrome.
Okay.
Geschwind.
Interesting.
And she displayed absolutely all of that immediately upon injury, and for the rest of her life. She was grim and humorless and rigid and just dour, and she hated sex, and she wrote so much that I would love for someone to put together a research of like everything that was supposedly written by her. She also plagiarized a ton and stole a lot from all of her assistants and things, but everything that was supposedly written by her, I think would have taken someone several lifetimes to actually write themselves, you know.
I mean, 40 books and 5,000 articles.
Yeah. And letters. Anytime she didn't like anything that anyone in the whole church was doing, particularly if it undermined her authority or her control, letters to their church, letters to them. You're terrible, you're bad, God is going to come smite you. So yeah, complete hypergraphia.
And just really quickly, Joseph Smith, we've found in modern times many, many instances where he plagiarized. So plagiarism as an author before he really even starts the church is a major parallel.
Well, and I bet, I would bet, and let me know if this is not the case, but I would imagine the Mormons handle it exactly the way the Adventists do in saying that like, oh, but everybody did it back then. That's what it was, you know, plagiarism wasn't a thing, so nobody knew not to do that. Okay, fine.
That's actually different. The way the Mormons spin it is that God inspired him to consult sources that then were incorporated into his writings, but that's a feature, not a bug. In other words, the plagiarism was part of the holy process.
There you go. Okay, so Adventists will say that also. Okay. First they say, no, plagiarism wasn't a thing, so she didn't know she was doing wrong. And then if you say, but she claimed it was visions from God, so it would still be wrong to be claiming that someone else's words were your vision from God. And then they bring in that whole, well, God was pointing her. God was using, using her. And she would defend herself viciously because during her lifetime, people would say, you cribbed from Paradise Lost, or you cribbed from all these other, especially her health message was cribbed from all these other people. And she would claim up, down, and sideways that she knew those books existed, but she had never read them before she wrote her book. And afterwards she read them, and she was so impressed that God had inspired her with the same message. So it was proof that God had told her the right thing.
I'm guessing, we'll get to the health code, but I'm guessing she was inspired by the temperance movement, which Joseph Smith was as well.
So, they have huge similarities there. Yeah, she had her health message, and he had his, what was it called?
Word of Wisdom.
There you go, Book of Wisdom. All that behavioral control, which of course is just classic cult stuff, but all the dietary, the temperance stuff, and what was it? In the Victorian times, it was a big, vigor, your bodily vigor or whatever, that having sex was supposed to dissipate, drinking was supposed to dissipate, like the bodily vapors or whatever they really believed in.
And I know Kellogg's going to come into this in a second. So she's probably just a normal Christian, but then she has these seizures and starts having visions.
Right.
Like, how does she go from being a member of a previous church to starting her own? Like, how does she evolve from just a Christian who got hit in the head having visions to like prophet status.
It's really interesting. So apparently she was a Methodist originally with her parents, raised
Joseph
Methodist.
Smith explored Methodism.
In the East Coast kind of Methodist tradition.
Yeah.
And then at some point right around the Miller Great Disappointment, she was part of the kind of the jumping and screaming and speaking in tongues Methodist part. And then she got involved in the Sabbath keeping that was, I think, done by several groups then, but the Adventists kind of took it as their thing. And from then on, she kind of just drove the bus for the Adventists, and they all rallied around her spirit of prophecy. And, there was Joseph Bates and Kellogg and everything, but she cemented her power very quickly. By the time she was about 19, she was the Adventist, and she was already starting to vilify and tell people that God was telling her that they were bad and horrible, and she had the power to kick them out.
Okay. So we're talking, so there was an Adventist movement before Ellen White? It was kind of part of that Millerite movement from what I understand. And again, I'm a little sketchy on all those details because Adventist history just makes me just blah. But there was a just following basically the old Jewish rules of sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, observance of the Sabbath, and then Seventh-day Adventist. There were some other, and there still are little fractions that are use the word Advent or Seventh Day but the Seventh-day Adventist Church of Ellen White became the primary one. Okay. So we're talking late 1840s.
Yeah.
She's 18-ish.
Yeah.
And she's already seized control and consolidated a Seventh-day Adventist movement around this idea of a Saturday Sabbath observance.
Right. And by the 1860s, she really had the church up and running, and centered around her and her health reform and the Seventh Day. They had all these things that they thought were made them special from everyone else. That basically were based off of her writings and her reinterpretation of Paradise Lost.
So tell us a little bit more about what it means to have a Saturday Sabbath practice for y'all. Because I think not only is it a different day, but I wonder if the practice is even more controlled and rigid than a Mormon or even a traditional Christian. So what's the Sabbath practice like as it would have been, Saturday Sabbath practice as it would have been practiced in the mid-1800s? Oh
my gosh, as it would have been practiced back then.
Did you remember?
Even to this day, there are extremists who practice it probably very similarly. You have to get ready on Friday, absolutely everything, including cooking the meals, getting everything you weren't allowed to cook. You're not, and still, you're not allowed to shop. You're not allowed to go out to eat. There is no amusement of any kind. You cannot listen to radio or watch TV or do anything. Most people start Friday night with Vespers, either at home or they go to church.
What's
like a kind of supposed to be personal devotion type of service where it's mostly just prayer and reading the Bible. There's no real sermon type of thing. And reading Ellen White, of course. And then Saturday mornings are for what they call Sabbath school, which is people broken out into age-appropriate groups. So they have the little kids and the teenagers. And then after Sabbath school, then everyone goes to church, and that lasts until approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something. And then you go home and you eat your midday meal, and then you're supposed to do basically nothing except for something that would glorify God. So, we were allowed to walk in nature, but you weren't allowed to swim. You weren't allowed to do any, amusements, go anywhere, do anything, compete. We weren't allowed to do competitive sports or And so you basically pray, worship. Of course, most adults ended up just taking naps and sleeping the day away. But
what's wrong with swimming on the Sabbath?
Ellen White had said that it was wrong. She had all these very strange rules about no bowling, but bowling alleys and movie theaters, I guess, were considered sin and iniquity. But swimming was always a weird gray area, which of course tortured a lot of Adventist children. It was too much considered self-amusement, really. Like you were having too much fun when you swam, and Ellen White hated fun. And it would distract you from God, whereas if you were just taking a stroll, you were appreciating birds and grass and flowers and whatever, supposedly. But yeah, no other real exercise. You can't go to the gym. You can't go running. You can't. But
so really quickly, just because the parallels are fun.
Yeah.
So Mormons don't start their Sabbath observance like Saturday night. It's just Sunday, midnight to Saturday midnight to Sunday. So it's Sunday. However, the whole idea of like not watching TV, not watching movies, not doing anything worldly, and interestingly, no sports. That's totally Mormon. Like BYU, the Mormon Church's university today, is famous because they won't do any athletic events on Sunday.
Oh my gosh, they have like a famous football team and all that. How do they do that?
They've been able to work with whatever athletic conference they're in as a university to make sure that whatever tournaments are held aren't ever held on the Sabbath. So Mormons are hardcore about no sports on Sunday. And Joseph Smith said, swimming is dangerous for missionaries, but not for normal people. So there's a swimming thing and a waters are dangerous thing in Mormonism, but it's not necessarily on the Sabbath. It's more for missionaries. But you wouldn't swim on the Sabbath, and you definitely wouldn't do sports on the Sabbath in Mormonism. So and it's a holy day where in fact, a lot of Mormons grew up where you don't change out of your church clothes. You stay in your church clothes all day, even after church.
Yes, that is a little bit of an Adventist thing too. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that one. It was definitely frowned upon to get out of your church clothes. That's interesting.
So some similarities.
A lot of fun similarities. Yeah. And it's interesting when they're similar, but they have different reasons. And it just... a lot of it speaks to that whole time that they kind of formed, that whole Victorian obsession with, a spirituality and no sexuality and all the other things that pressured the temperance. And
but it reminds me most of Shabbat, like an Orthodox Jew's practice of Shabbat.
Yes.
That sounds like what y'all did.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. And often Sabbath ends with another worship service right before sundown. And of course, as a kid, you were just sitting watching the clock. And that was a sin too. You can't just be waiting for sundown so that you can go back to your normal life. God would hate that. That's bad. But of course we did. We just watched the clock so that we could do something. But you weren't even allowed to read anything secular. But Ellen White had a whole thing about that too. She thought novels were a danger and magazines were a danger, and so we generally weren't allowed to read much of fun at any point, but certainly not on the Sabbath.
Let me ask you about her core writings.
Yes.
So Seventh-day Adventists believe in the Old and New Testament, the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. Really quickly, how do you... I guess Christians traditionally have a way of saying that Christ, the old law was Sabbath on Saturday, but the new law was Sabbath on Sunday. Y'all clearly have some different way of interpreting that. Do you even know the theological basis for that?
I don't know the theological basis for that, but I suspect that they blame the Pope and the Catholic Church because the Adventists have this huge obsession with the Catholics being the mark of the beast and the evil everything, and Catholics are going to come back in the time of trouble in the end, and they're going to torture them. And
Can I blow your mind? So the Book of Mormon denounces basically the Catholic Church as the great and abominable church. It literally calls it in the Book of Mormon the whore of all the earth.
There you go.
Did you know that?
I did not know. I knew that Mormons had a similar hatred for Catholics, but that verbiage particularly is absolutely. So we mark of the beast at them, and you guys whore of the whole earth at them. And the Catholics, meanwhile, didn't know any of us existed forever, and they still don't know Adventists exist. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
so the Sabbath maybe was tied to the Catholics?
Yeah, I think that was, they blame the original papacy and all of that for changing it from Sabbath to Sunday.
Interesting.
And so
Okay.
they are the only one true remnant church because they obey the true Sabbath.
I mean, yeah, these churches need a defining doctrine to kind of set them apart.
Yes.
And it sounds like the Sabbath was a major one for
To
y'all.
set them apart and also to feel persecuted over. The Adventists have a huge persecution fetish. And, so they need lots of things that they can always feel like everyone is,
Okay. Okay, but otherwise, similar to Protestant Christianity?
Pretty much. They have a lot of, generally, absolutely. And they would say, yeah, we're no different. But then they also say, but we're so special because of. They do have weird interpretations. And I had to go through and take notes because I was like, so they have these 28 doctrines that define the church. And most of them are just standard. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in a Trinity. Just standard stuff that doesn't make you blink too much. But then toward the end of their doctrines is their whole definition of what happens. And I have to just get this right because they have a first resurrection and a second resurrection of people on earth where the good people are resurrected and then the bad people are resurrected later just so that they can be tortured by God basically and then re-killed.
We have multiple resurrections too. Yeah. Yeah.
This is amazing. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So
my patriarchal listing said I would be resurrected in the morning of the first resurrection. That's what my patriarchal listing says. So same. Keep going.
Oh my God. Okay. So their whole belief about this, so they have this thing called the investigative judgment that they think really sets them apart. And it was basically defined by Ellen White as a way to make up for being wrong about the Great Disappointment. So she, and not just her, but other Adventist whatevers, but she really took it and ran with it and wrote many books about it, decided that they had been wrong that Jesus was coming in October of 1844. What it really meant, what the Bible was really saying was Jesus was entering from, I guess, normal heaven into the sanctuary in heaven, where he was going to
relocated.
He relocated in heaven to somewhere more holy.
Which is non-disprovable, by the way.
Exactly.
How do you disprove that Jesus moved? Right. You can't. Exactly. So that's convenient.
Jesus moved. Yes. So then he's in some more holy spot in heaven, where then he is doing the investigative judgment, where he is going over the records of every single person, living or dead. And there's something about he's arguing with God, like he has to prove to God who is good and who is bad or something.
Mm-hmm. Like an advocate.
Like an advocate, yeah. Like, and I don't know what God's point is, but and then so then after that, let me see if I've got this straight, because I again was just like, what did we believe? So crazy, because again, I left at 18, so a lot of this stuff just went right over my head. I left because of all the behavioral stuff and not the weird theology stuff. And when I looked at it, I was like, this is just absurd. So Jesus entered the most holy place in 1844. It's a part of heaven. He starts the investigative judgment. He's arguing with God over who's dead and who's alive, deserves saving. Okay, so then the time of trouble starts. So by the time Jesus is almost done with the investigative judgment, somehow down here on earth, it's going to be known, and the time of trouble starts. And the Adventists are so excited about that. They really can't wait for all this persecution that's going to be rained down on them at the time of trouble. So Jesus closes whatever investigative judgments he's doing. And there's a little time of trouble where the Catholics take over. They make a Sunday legislation. And the Sunday law is one of the Adventists' big claims to specialness. The Catholic Church in the little time of trouble is going to join with the governments of the world, and they're going to enforce a Sunday law where everyone has to worship on Sunday. So that's going to persecute the Adventists. And, growing up, I never once heard them ever mention that Jews also worship on Saturday, but somehow just the Adventists are going to be persecuted for it. So the evil people are going to get the mark of the beast, and there are going to be 144,000 righteous people left on the earth, and they're going to get the seal of God. And then there are going to be the plagues and the disasters, and everyone's going to be tortured who has the seal of God, the 144,000, and they're going to run and hide in the mountains. So then the second coming, Jesus comes down, but he doesn't touch the earth, apparently. He kind of hangs in the air above the earth, and there's the first resurrection of everyone. The righteous dead are resurrected, and they kind of ascend up into the little airspace with Jesus, and the unrighteous alive people die. So then all the righteous, the living 144,000, and the resurrected righteous are taken to heaven with Jesus. So then begins the millennium.
Okay, really quickly.
Yes,
and that 144,000 is something obviously Jehovah's Witnesses really cling to.
Yep.
I think that's in the Bible, so Mormons have that too.
Yeah.
And a lot of end times millennialistic kind of stuff. I was really into that as a Mormon growing up, is like what happens when Jesus comes again, and the destruction and the great battle and Gog of Magog,
totally.
and that whole kind of thing. So anyway, same with that.
Yep.
So.
Yep. They all love it. It's so vivid, and it's so, So,
it's almost like a horror movie.
It is.
Vibes for Christians,
Yeah. Oh, and for kids being raised in it, I mean, it just gave us lasting nightmares and just horrible, horrible trauma. It's child abuse.
Because it scares you into wanting to obey the leadership.
Right.
Because you don't want to end up getting burned. And by the way, Jesus is coming anytime. And I have to just acknowledge one big difference between Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists. So y'all believe that the soul is actually destroyed, right? Like you don't go on living forever as an inferior, not in heaven kind of soul. Is that right?
They call it soul sleep, I guess. They just believe that when you die, you're just like nothing happens. You're just dead. That's it. There's no.
That's pre-judgment, though, right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yes, and then they do believe in annihilationism or whatever after. Yes,
which is if you don't make the cut,
right?
Then what happens to your soul?
Then you're burned in a lake of fire. Oh yeah, we're getting there.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so the millennium happens.
Okay.
So Jesus comes. Jesus and the righteous are for 1,000 years are in heaven.
We got that too. 1,000 years of millennium.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay. And so then I guess they're going back over the records of everyone. And Jesus is proving, now not arguing with God, I guess he's letting all of the righteous go over all the records. They get to look at everybody's their own, and so that they know that Jesus made the right choices. Judgment is just so, they love judgment. Mm-hmm. And so the earth at that time, for those 1,000 years, have no humans. It's just evil iniquity. It's Satan and his angels.
Interesting.
Destroying the earth for 1,000 years. At the end, Jesus brings down the holy city, the New Jerusalem, and he lands this perfect, beautiful city with all the righteous with him on the earth. And that begins the new earth. And Satan and his angels, so then this is the second resurrection of the bad guys. So any evil people that were judged in that 1,000 years are resurrected on the earth. They join Satan and his angels, and they try to fight. They circle the holy city, and they try to attack the righteous. And then the lake of fire comes and burns them all. So yeah, there's no long-lasting hell. There's just this final lake of fire that burns Satan, the bad angels, and all the bad people. And then God stays on earth. Somehow heaven's not as good as this new earth with all the righteous, and there's just perfection ever after.
So earth becomes heaven?
I guess so.
Okay, yeah. So in Mormonism, earth becomes the lowest degree of heaven, the celestial kingdom.
Okay.
But there's other existences. But interesting, yeah. So the soul extinction thing is different because in Mormonism, you're in an inferior kingdom or in what's called outer darkness, but your soul isn't extinguished.
Okay.
In Seventh-day Adventism, it sounds like the soul.
It is, yeah.
If you don't make the cut,
right,
your soul is extinguished.
You're just destroyed, and you're not tortured forever, and you're not anything. You're just burned up in the lake of fire.
But the whole Satan with his angels in a final battle, that's all definitely us as well.
Same thing, yeah.
Okay. Wow. And that's called eschatology, right? Like the study of end times?
Yes.
So y'all have a robust eschatology.
Very, very. They're obsessed with end times. And I mean, a lot of kids, I did not personally, thank goodness, in Adventist school, a lot of kids are taken out into the woods to practice for end times. They have to eat bugs. They have to they're chased by people with guns. Some kids have the horrible stories of people literally holding guns to their heads and saying, I killed your parents, and do you disavow the Saturday Sabbath? And they have to practice for this. It's terrible.
So is there prepperism in your movement?
Yes. Yeah.
So we have that. So what is that? How does that look like in your movement?
It's a lot of practicing. Well, again, there's such a spectrum. I'm sure Mormons have it too, of the liberals don't really, but then there's this extreme Adventist part where, they're building compounds and they're practicing living out in the woods, and they're a lot of them literally kind of form family cult types of things and just go live off the grid completely.
Food storage stuff?
Food storage, yes,
okay,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Lots of similarities there. Okay, so going back to Ellen White, let's talk about I don't know if you all call it scripture, because I don't believe her stuff was ever canonized to be the exact same status as the Bible. But what are her most important texts? What do they say? And how are they used by members that you know of?
Yeah, they're very obsessed with making sure that everyone knows that they don't really put her work equal to the Bible. Yeah, so that she isn't officially canonized, and they think that is the proof that they're not a cult right there. End of subject. Yeah. But they do. They believe every word that she wrote was divinely inspired. So, I mean, tomato, tomato. She had two big tracks. I like to think of it as she had probably her most famous work is The Great Controversy, which
book.
It's a book, yeah. In fact, it was a trilogy, The Desire of Ages, something, and it was basically just graphic, gory descriptions of this big battle, the end time stuff, God and heaven. She first tells how Satan gets cast out of heaven in the beginning, and then she has this whole, in the end times, how it's going to happen. And I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of pages of God versus the devil in various iterations.
Are there characters, like biblical characters? Are there humans? Is she like a central figure? Do you know? I mean, this sounds like end times New Testament Bible fan fiction, basically.
That's basically what it is. She's not a character, and as far as I can remember, it's been, we were force-fed it so much when I was in high school that I still can't even look at the books. But as far as I remember, it was, biblical fan fiction, just retelling of biblical stories with all of her own embellishments and all of her own putting Adventist doctrine in there about the lake of fire and the this and that doesn't appear in the Bible.
So it's like an apocalyptic book.
Yes. And you can see, it's funny, when they mail out, because they have all these great controversy mailings, we're mailing 5 million copies of they just cold mail this stuff to people. People are like, what in the world? And they put the most lurid covers on these things. They don't say they're Adventists. They just say, this is, what's going to happen soon. All signs point toward, you must read this. And it looks like an apocalyptic novel. And you just want to read it because, wow, there's these drugstore pulp fiction type covers of battles and... So it is interesting. Yeah, it's Bible fan fiction.
And that book is called what again?
The Great Controversy.
Okay, so that's the first major work of hers.
It wasn't the first. She actually developed that.
That you are noting as...
that's the seminal. That's her big work. But her first works were actually more... she did do a lot of doctrine, but she kind of refined and changed her doctrinal writings along the way. So but a lot of her first efforts in writing were the behavioral control and the dietary stuff. Some of her first stuff was advice to mothers on how to get your children to stop masturbating, just the horrible, horrible things, torturing children.
So she's in the mid-1800s, she's obsessed with children masturbating.
Yep. She and Kellogg.
Right.
Yeah, they were big. I mean, the Adventist Church, and they hate it when I say this, but it is so true. They have a huge obsession with sex in general, and it started with her, but it continues to this day.
Do you know biographically what happened in her life that made just the head injury?
I think it was mostly just the head injury.
Okay.
Nobody has ever shown that there was any kind of molestation or trauma or, I mean, she got married really fairly young, but not young for that time. I think she was 16 or 17 or something, and had the same husband all her life. And I think
Did they have kids?
they did.
Ooh.
Those poor children.
Oh.
Yeah.
They didn't have a happy life?
They did not. One of them ended up being sort of a charlatan, just like her, and trying to just continually say that what he wrote was biblical-ish. His name was Willie or William, I think. And she would write them these nasty letters. I can remember because some of them still haunt me that we would read as children about God doesn't love children who experience bad feelings. Remember to always be cheerful, and God won't save naughty children in the end times. When the persecution comes, naughty children can't be saved, and just horrible things to write to children. But they're
Did she have a euphemism for masturbation?
Oh, yes. There were several.
What'd she call it?
It was self-pollution was one of them.
Mormons call it self-abuse.
Self-abuse.
Oh, y'all do that too?
Yep. Self-abuse, self-pollution. And she had another one that was even more kind of euphemistic. Oh, gosh. Because it's really goofy and very Victorian. And I think Kellogg used it too. The solo vice.
Okay. Yeah.
And it
Okay.
seems like
Solitary vice,
Yes.
secret vice, self-abuse. Yeah.
Right.
Mormons call it self-abuse. So,
They were, and again, that was a Victorian obsession. I guess they were even, covering up the legs on pianos, grand pianos, because that was too sexy and might inspire lust and things, just in
Really?
general, Victorians were. So,
gosh.
that was a whole thing. I guess Queen Victoria was just horribly anti-sex also. So I guess it was kind of trendy to be anti-sex, but certainly the Adventists, Ellen White, John Harvey, Kellogg, took it to an extreme. And when we start talking about my story, we'll talk about the modern iterations of it, the purity culture, which is super extreme in the Adventist Church, and a lot of their anti-LGBTQ stuff that today is really dangerous. They were one of the major proponents of conversion therapy. They helped get the gay death law in place in Uganda. They're just obsessed with controlling everything about generally natural sexuality. They don't control. What they don't control is the predators that prey on children in their church.
Yeah.
But hey.
And we'll have major similarities there. But this is interesting because Ellen White went the opposite direction of Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith went towards sexual predation, polygamy, lots and lots of sex. But weirdly, somehow the church pivots towards puritanical sexual mores, even though its founder can be classified as a sexual predator. So we ended up kind of where y'all were, but we started out with a founder who was the opposite. He obviously loved sex. So
right.
Isn't that weird?
It is so weird. I've often wondered how that jibes in the Mormon tradition, because the magic underwear and the purity, I know. It
jibes by the church hiding Joseph Smith's polygamy and denying it and lying about it for about 150 to 200 years. So that's how we pulled that off.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's lots of lying and hiding of Ellen White hypocrisies too. So it's absolutely.
Okay, so that wasn't necessarily a second book per se. It's just sort of like a collection of her writings.
It's a collection of her writings. I don't even know. I'd love to know what her writing process was. And a lot of people have analyzed it and stuff. And she did lean on secretaries and things who wrote a lot of it, I think, for her. And then she plagiarized a lot. But what her books are is they were just continually packaged and repackaged. Like you can find different quotes of hers in 5 or 6 different books that is like Ellen White's Messages to Mothers, Ellen White's Messages to Young People. Then she has the Adventist Home, and just literally 50, 60 titles of advice for people on how to live. And she had advice for how to do everything. I'm sure she had advice for how to put on your shoes. the typical cult control. And it just
kind of like a self-help guru of the mid-1800s.
She would have thrived in the health and wellness guru area. I mean, she really was, basically. That's what she was. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard stuff early on with his first major book that wasn't Pulp Fiction, basically Dianetics.
Yeah.
Was kind of self-help as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really quick, you mentioned the plagiarism. This becomes a controversy in your church as it relates to people challenging the truth claims of the church and the legitimacy of Ellen White as a prophetess.
Right.
And I have here just this book.
Ooh, probably this one.
The White Lie. Yeah. Just because we've mentioned plagiarism, do you want to go ahead and talk about that a little bit?
Okay. So this is the seminal book that really busted the myth and mythos of Ellen White. And I think he got excommunicated clearly. And so there's the Ellen White estate controls all of her writings and apparently has huge vaults and vats of stuff that's never been published, never been exposed to the public. And he got a hold of some of it and was able to track, the major plagiarism. He also, and then there's another one that I brought here that just came out in 2020, a psychobiography of Ellen White. I don't know if that can be seen, but this also tracks a lot of the plagiarism, but also her lying, her hypocrisy, her consolidating power. Like the White Lie covers a lot of where she would write to people, well, God showed me that, we should not be playing in politics. And if they didn't do what she said, well, God showed me that we should play in politics. She would manipulate people.
She would change her revelations. Mm-hmm. Joseph Smith did that too.
Yes. Yeah.
So revelations could literally... Later revelations could literally contradict earlier revelations.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And Walter Reed was the first person to really show all of that, as well as tracking down the sources. And he would compare side by side things. And, she would change maybe a few words or whatever. But again, she was claiming these were visions from God. It's not just like she was saying, hey, this sounds like a good idea. Maybe I heard it somewhere, But she also, both of those books really cover how she didn't walk her own walk or talk her own talk. Like jewelry was banned, eating meat was banned, drinking alcohol was banned. She did all of those things. And again, those kind of came out in some of her writings.
Oh,
that
wait,
had been
you're
hidden.
saying she drank alcohol,
yes,
even though it was forbidden.
Yes.
Same with Joseph. Okay, so what are the things she did that she wasn't supposed to do? The hypocrisy?
The jewelry was a big, big thing. She banned jewelry, adornment of any kind.
But wore it?
But she had very expensive jewelry, and there are pictures of her wearing it. When I was growing up, even wedding bands were forbidden for people, and there was some church controversy because the Europeans always wore their wedding bands, and they didn't give a shit. And the Americans were horrified by that. That was very bad. But so yeah, she violated her own jewelry ban, and the drinking one was huge because there are letters of hers where she literally talks like she was in withdrawal. Like she said she was trying to resist her. She made this cider vinegar combination, which I guess is very highly fermented and has a fairly high alcohol content. And so she would talk about trying to resist her vinegar that she needed and being really sick for weeks because she just was resisting her vinegar. And
so an alcoholic who's telling all the members not to drink, basically.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Yeah. And then the same thing with her vegetarianism. She ate, not only did she eat meat, but the big Adventist thing is, maybe okay, some people can eat meat, but none of them will violate the biblical rules, the same ones that the Jews follow of like no unclean meat, so shellfish and pork. And
she ate, Jews, basically.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But she ate oysters. There are letters of hers asking someone to bring her some oysters when they come from wherever. And and pork, Pork, I don't know if there's anything that exists that shows that she ate pork, but I wouldn't.
That is prohibited?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Pork is my goodness. I mean, there are, again, poor Adventist kids. And I can remember, mistakenly eating a piece of bacon because it was in something that somebody made mac and cheese, for instance, at some potluck or something that you went to that wasn't Adventist, and you ate it and you didn't realize there was like bacon in there, and feeling like you were going to hell and crying and repenting forever and being so terrified. Same thing with soda. Like caffeine was so forbidden.
So wait, we do coffee and tea. So y'all, caffeine was like coffee and tea?
Caffeine was wildly forbidden, but yeah,
That's so wild.
Isn't that weird? But you guys did soda, right? So Coke is okay.
No, when I was growing up, it was forbidden with conservative Mormons to drink Coke or Diet Coke or any caffeinated soda.
I'm going to have some of my coffee.
Yeah, that's an evolution of Mormonism in the past 20 to 30 years is the cultural prohibition. I mean, there wasn't soda in Joseph Smith's time, right? So what he forbade was coffee and tea. He actually called it hot drinks. Okay. But that got interpreted to be coffee and tea. But yeah, when I was growing up, the really righteous Mormon families would never drink Coke or Dr. Pepper or any caffeinated beverage at all. Okay. And then that's just been
So why did he ban the hot drinks? I'm curious as to whether...
I mean, we've done some episodes on this before, but there was just, like with the temperance movement, there were some theories at the time that temperature-wise, hot beverages weren't good for your health. So again, he just absorbed some sort of folk common wisdom. Right. And, and he actually weirdly initially gave the word of wisdom as like advice, health advice. Okay. But then over time, the church codified it as being truly forbidden. Right. Okay. But anyway, in that was no tobacco, no alcohol, no coffee, no tea. And interestingly, the word of wisdom said, eat meat only in times of winter or famine. And Mormons have pretty much ignored that. But in our health code, we have a general denunciation and or prohibition of meat.
Isn't that interesting?
So we share that.
We do. That has to go back to just the general atmosphere in the Victorian, and I mean that's a perfect entry to talk about John Harvey Kellogg. Because
so he goes back into the 1800s.
He was he was a founding part of that whole. I don't know if he was part of the Millerite, but very shortly after he joined the Adventist, he was part of the whole Adventist thing, and one of the really founding members. He and Ellen were very close. He had a what was called the Battle Creek Sanatorium in Battle Creek, Michigan. He was a doctor, and presidents stayed there, like very famous people stayed there for cures, whatever cures were back then.
Did Michigan settle as the headquarters of the church?
Yes.
Around what decade?
Around
1850s,
I think
60s?
The 1860s, I think. Okay. By the 1890s, for sure, it was there. And
so Ellen White was living in Michigan?
And she moved there. Everybody moved to Battle Creek. It was where,
that's your Salt Lake City.
Yeah, it was where his sanatorium was. They started the seminary there. That has since moved somewhere else in Michigan. They had universities and everything.
Got it.
And we'll get into their whole obsession with medicine and education also. But
and where's Battle Creek? Just so I have it.
It's sort of in the middle of Michigan-ish, but I think more toward the Detroit side. It's not toward the Lake Michigan side.
Got it. So Kellogg.
Yes. So Kellogg had this sanatorium, and he was obsessed. I mean, talk about being obsessed with sex and not. He thought that any sex depleted the life force, etc. He was very anti-masturbation, but he was even against marital sex. He and his wife never consummated their marriage, as far as anyone knows. No. They never had children. They adopted 42 children or something, or they fostered 42 children and adopted 7 of them.
So is he either gay or asexual, basically?
Well, that's what I can only assume. Yeah. Nobody ever proved that he'd had weird, illicit anything else's. So I'm thinking more asexual, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
And or had some sort of horrific experience as a child that he just like all sex was scary and terrible and bad, maybe.
So he shared that with Ellen White.
Yes.
Just
yes. So they kind of egged each other on in a way, I think. And so his stuff went as far as, so that's where the caffeine and alcohol and everything came in. It was partly temperance, but it was also that loosens your inhibitions, so you might get sexual, and or it heightens them. So caffeine and so he and Ellen took it with their health message even further. So like I was raised with no salt, no pepper, no mustard. We were not allowed to have spices of any kind. Ellen said spicy things inflamed the body and made you sexual. That was also why we were not allowed to have drums. To this day, there's no drum anything in Adventist services or music because those might make you move your body. And that was a question I had for you, but Mormons do dance, right?
Mormons dance, but we don't allow like raucous instruments in our church services.
Okay.
It's just like organs and pianos and maybe violins.
Right.
But no guitars or percussion for sure.
Okay, that's similar. But you do dance because somehow dancing was...
Weirdly, Brigham Young and Joseph Smith loved dancing, and that was never forbidden.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, so Ellen must have hated it because it was very forbidden. It was dancing of any kind was very sexual. So when I was I really wanted to take ballet, and I was not allowed to take ballet because that was not.
Well, again, Joseph and Brigham loved sex, so they would not have hated dancing yet.
That's true. We have to remember that. That's that very polar distinction there.
Brigham Young had like 50 whatever wives.
Right.
Joseph had over 30, and Brigham had over 50.
Brigham was wow. Yeah, he was also the one who had the transvestite son, right?
He had like a gender non-conforming child.
Okay. If you have 50 wives and you have a gazillion children, I mean, the variety there is going to be. So
spicy food.
Spicy food was
inflame the passions. and caffeine.
Yep. Okay. So Kellogg came up with his cornflakes and bran flakes and everything else as fiber was going to cure lust, basically. So you had to have high fiber everything. And this, interestingly, was not just him. Again, it was part of the Victorian everything obsession with, because he kind of crabbed that from Sylvester Graham, who invented the graham crackers for the very same thing.
But Graham wasn't Seventh-day Adventist.
He was not, but he was part of some other religious whatever that was trying to cure everything with diet and
Everything is remixed, man. Everything is remixed.
Right. It's totally. And there was a French guy that even predated all of them who did very similar stuff.
Of course.
But
so Kellogg's cornflakes, I remember hearing this just randomly, was Kellogg's attempt to cure masturbation.
Yes, exactly. And he had all these other things. He was giving people yogurt enemas. He was doing everything, all to cure lust and sex, because it was just... but he, interestingly enough, is the main reason that... up until recently, anyway, most American boys were circumcised. It was a Kellogg push.
No.
Circumcision was supposed to prevent masturbation.
But also Jews circumcised.
But exactly, yeah. But apparently his was this big push about masturbation, and he was circumcising adults, and then he was advocating doing it to children. And I guess that didn't sell very well to the populace. So then in America, it became this cleanliness thing, like, it's got to be a cleanliness thing. And but Kellogg was also advocating circumcising women to prevent masturbation. And that carried forward in the Adventist system until the 1960s. And we'll talk about that when we talk. So dark. And they deny, do they deny that.
So y'all have female genital mutilation in your history. Oh, I did not know that.
Exactly. Let me see. I brought all my handy dandy props. So this book.
What's it called?
On Becoming a Woman, oddly enough, where they talk about chopping off your woman parts. But this is written by an Adventist physician named Harold Shryock, and it was written, I think, in the 1950s. We were still reading it as part of our marriage and family class in Adventist school in the 1980s. And I've heard from kids that still had to read it in 2006 in Adventist boarding schools. in it, he has a chapter on preventing solo vice and talks about how it's very easily cured. You just snip off some little body parts and it's fixed.
I'm just like getting sick.
Isn't that ill? It just makes you absolutely sick.
Do you know? So like, first of all, it's so weird how these high demand religions or cults can have really prominent, significant, even horrendous doctrines that are mainstream.
Yeah.
And then somehow they can throw it down the memory hole, change.
Yep.
And then like 1 or 2 generations go by and the church is denying it and nobody even has a collective memory that it ever happened.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, okay, do you know the history of how female genital mutilation got extinguished in your movement?
I don't know that it has been. I think it's always been undercover since Kellogg, probably, and it's illegal in more than half the states in the United States. A man named John Chua, if anybody wants to go down the rabbit hole, a man named John Chua, I believe, Chua, did a very illuminating documentary for, and I never can remember if it's PBS or the BBC, but it was called The Cut, female FGM in the United States or in America. And he interviewed, he figured out this book. He interviewed a survivor of it who had it done to her by an Adventist physician in, I would say probably the early 60s. She had it done to her when she was 3 years old because her grandmother thought she was discovering her female parts, and that was evil.
Oh, so it's sometimes a consequence for being discovered to be engaging. And of course, children touch themselves like just as a part of a healthy,
as part of growing up. Yeah.
Okay. So I would never ask someone this directly, but it just sounds like by the time you're growing up, that wasn't something you or your peers were experiencing.
Not as far as I know. People were being sent to conversion therapy was the most, draconian stuff I knew. But then again, when you think about a community that controls sexual information, so like we were given no information about how our bodies worked. It was just marriage and family abstinence. That's it. And so I do wonder how many women had this happen to them. Like that woman had it happen at 3 years old. She didn't even know until in the 20s. In her 20s, she had no clue because she was 3. And so she said that in that documentary, she said, "Well, I went to an Adventist doctor when I was in like 20 or something, and said there's something wrong with me. Like I'm having issues." And he said he gave her a pamphlet on masturbation and sent her away and said, "Just don't ever do this, and you'll be fine." And so this in the documentary, they went to Loma Linda Medical School, which is the Adventist. So this guy, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place,
but
I get so I get so upset about this topic. So too. Harold Shryock, who wrote this, was the dean of medicine. He wrote the manuals for all of the doctors trained at the Loma Linda Medical School, which is a very famous medical school. They did one of the first heart transplants from baboon to child in the early 80s.
That's California?
It's Loma Linda.
Okay.
In California. And it
is that north, south, central?
It's south. It's kind of east of Los Angeles, basically. Okay. And so for 30 years, he was the man who ran that medical institution. And there's a hall there, Shryock Hall, named after him. He wrote a bunch of books for raising children, et cetera. And so this documentarian, John Chua, went to Loma Linda and said, "Hey, you guys were practicing FGM. What's up?" And they were like, they interviewed, I think, the current dean of medicine, and he was just like, "Oh, no, I don't think we were doing that." And he said, "Well, it's in this book, and I met somebody, and blah, blah, blah." And they said, "Oh, we don't know who Shryock is. We don't really listen to him." And the documentary just panned to Shryock Hall. It's just ridiculous. But again, how they just change, sweep it under the rug, and nobody talks about it again.
So they probably would have had this point in the history where they would have destroyed all the evidence.
I'm sure
that stuff ever happened.
I'm sure
there's got to be a documentary or biography there about how that got changed, whether it was state legislatures outlawing it or whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Like I'm surprised we can't look in old archives of newspapers or magazines.
Yeah.
To hear about that hubbub.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, with Mormon polygamy, right?
Right.
The federal government came out against us and started incarcerating our leaders. And it took a couple decades, but eventually, but there's a paper trail and a legal trail of the extinguishing of polygamy, both externally and internally to the church.
Yes.
So I have to believe that would exist with y'all.
You know, I think the problem there is, again, the tight control that they have on women and on sexuality. I really wonder how many women ever knew that it was done to them.
Yeah.
You know, because we were taught.
Parents would have, unless the doctors were doing it without parental consent.
Yeah, parents would have known, but parents would never have.
Unless they kept it from parents.
The parents would have kept it from the kids, I think. They would have done it so young.
This is so dark.
You know, I know I don't know. It's just when people learn nothing about their bodies, and then women are told that sex isn't really about them anyway, pleasure is not for them, it's just for their husband. So if these women were never having orgasms and they just went straight from being all virginal as far as they knew to a marriage where sex just really didn't feel very good, I don't know that they would have known that was something that, because they were missing body parts. I think they just would have gone onward. So, I mean, I really do wonder how many women are out there who had it possibly done to them. They would be older now, probably 50, 60, 70. I'm sure there's incredible shame around it, even if they do know that it happened to them. So I don't know how many people would talk about it. And so, the records would have to be parents who'd forced it, who would actually fess up.
Or diaries, maybe. Yeah. But wow, that's wild.
I keep hoping.
I didn't know this.
Nobody does. I speak about it and no one knows about it. Like, I mean, I didn't even know about it when I read the book the first time as a teenager. I didn't know what he was referring to. I didn't even know what solo vice was. On becoming a woman. It
talks about surgery?
He says, I probably can find it because I've circled it with all kinds of exclamation points and angry marks. Yeah, here we go.
Oh my gosh.
So there is an anatomical factor that sometimes causes irritation about the clitoris and encourages manipulation of this delicate reproductive organ. Although such cases are not very common, evidence of irritation of these issues is sufficient reason for a woman to go to a Christian physician. Oftentimes, the remedy for this situation consists of a minor surgical operation known as a circumcision. This operation is not hazardous and is much to be preferred to allowing this condition of manipulation and irritation to continue.
My gosh. That's it. And that was a book that...
Evil.
Like we have a book called The Miracle of Forgiveness that was used to shame people sexually for decades. That's kind of like your miracle of forgiveness, basically.
Very, very. And there's, funnily enough, there's one on becoming a man. I don't know anyone who ever had to read it. I don't know that anyone ever. I have a copy of it, and I should have actually brought it. I've never read it. But it is also very anti-masturbation, but I don't believe it talks about circumcision.
So, okay, I don't know if this is the right time to talk about this, but like as I was doing some prep work, I noted the irony that your church is technically founded by a woman, and yet in modern times there's been controversy over whether women could be ordained ministers. But but before we jump to that, I'm just assuming traditional gender roles is kind of what that book is going to be promoting. Is that right? What does it mean to be a classical Seventh-day Adventist woman, according to your history and culture? Yeah,
very, very traditional. Again, it's this weird thing where the Adventists are big on education, so they don't take education away from women, like, say, the JWs or something, I guess. We were encouraged to go to college. We were, if it was an Adventist college, of course.
Church college.
But then really women, at least until I graduated from high school, we weren't encouraged to pursue careers, really. You could be a teacher or a nurse until you got married and had children.
Same as us.
But you could study anything you wanted in college, but it was just understood that you probably weren't going to use it, you know. And so, yes, they do not ordain women still to this day.
But just to be clear, the divine role of a woman is to be a wife and a mom.
Yes, wife and a mom.
And
Absolutely.
like lots of kids, some kids.
Adventists are so funny. That's one of the things they kind of think sets them apart, and they're so special is they don't believe in the whole Catholic and Mormon pop out a ton of children thing. They think that's kind of lowbrow or something, that they believe in quality over quantity.
So like what's the standard, 1 or 2?
Probably 2 to 4. We had, 4 was still on the border, but having large families was actually kind of sneered at. So much of Adventism is not codified. It's the sideways. It's the what you just absorb. So we knew not to stretch our resources too far and only have the kids that you could afford to educate in Adventist schools, which were not cheap, and that kind of thing.
Interesting. Real quick, did y'all ever come out with the prohibition on like marital oral sex, that sort of thing?
Oh my gosh, that's a fun topic because I know the Mormons have a very strange thing on that. Everything was forbidden. We had in marriage and family class, we had a chart that showed us if you started dating someone and you started with holding hands, and it would just go month by month, and you'd better either be married by year 2 or 3, or it was all the woman's responsibility for what would happen because boys would just get blue balls and it would just be horrible, and it was all the woman's fault. And then within marriage, we never got any information. So there was no prohibition on oral sex or anything. As far as I know, it was just like once you reached that gate of, oh, you're married, then everything was just going to be fabulous and everything was free game. And it was supposed to still all be about men. Women's pleasure was not part of it. But as far as I know, there were no rules about.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the Mormons have the jumping on the bed for people or whatever
Well, I mean, that comes later, the whole soaking kind
there
of
you go,
thing.
Soaking.
But I mean, before that, we had a prophet in the early 80s come out with an official church declaration that oral sex was forbidden. And it only lasted like 10 months. And then it was rescinded. A lot of Mormons don't even know that history. But traditionally, like missionary position.
Yes, right.
And even early Mormonism was like sex to have babies, but like sex for pleasure is kind of sketchy.
Yeah. That was a big part of, clearly Kellogg, but also Ellen White, was marital sex more than once a month, I think was one of her writings, was clearly just about your own pleasure and thus not encouraged, because nothing should be about your own pleasure.
And I guess because you kind of talked about it, this idea of, you referenced it slightly, but like women policing men's chastity and women being responsible gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And probably modesty.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about all that?
Yeah. So that, what they call today purity culture, but of course we didn't have that verbiage back when I was in school, and of course before that. But yes, modesty. We didn't have like the magic underwear or anything, but it was
or garments as
or garments. There you go. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But we were definitely policed in school rules and at home with like girls could not wear sleeveless stuff.
So shoulders are bad.
Yeah, showing the shoulders, and oh my gosh, a bra strap might be seen, and that would just be the end of everything, as anyone knows it. Skirts in school were measured; they couldn't be more than an inch above your knee or something.
What about shorts?
No shorts. Never allowed to wear shorts except for in PE class, and that was and we had these long baggy things, but. And then a lot of other control in terms of, we had no, supposedly no makeup, although pretty much everyone sort of ignored that rule to some extent. No jewelry. So women weren't supposed to be adorned. We weren't supposed to be glitzy looking. No fingernail polish, et cetera. And on any kind of camp experience or anything, only one-piece bathing suits, never anything.
No bikinis.
No bikinis, nothing risque. And only for swimming. And then you weren't allowed to lay around in your swimsuit, but because just bad things would happen. And then certainly when we had our marriage and family classes, and we had these things in school called Week of Prayer, and they would have a topic, and basically all school classes would pretty much go out the window, and you just assembled in the chapel every day, all day for a week, and did whatever the theme was. And so we would have these purity emphasis weeks of prayer, and we'd have guest speakers come in, and they would give us all the speeches about, if you as a woman give in to sexual temptation, not only are you leading the men astray, but you become the licked cupcake and the crumpled dollar bill. And we had a teacher who loved to use a sweated in, stretched out, dirty, wrinkled shirt that's on the floor. Would any man want to wear that shirt? He wants the one that's in the package still.
It's almost like you read about Mormonism, because we literally had the licked cupcake. We had like a nail in the board, the hole.
Oh my, yes.
The crumpled dollar bill was one. Like that's all.
The lock that opens for any key, but the key that opens any lock is valuable, whatever. And all that stuff.
Wow. So same there. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And that's basically saying that a woman's worth is tied to her sexual purity.
Yes, exactly.
Or it's ruined.
Right.
Damaged.
Right.
How did y'all handle confession/repentance as teens and young adults pre-marriage?
Thank goodness. That is the one thing, I guess, that I could say where Adventists were not horrifying. We didn't have any kind of public, we didn't have to go to a priest or anything or a pastor and confess our sins or anything. It was always just between you and God. You had
big difference.
You had to confess all of your sins. And I know people who said they just spent their lives praying and feeling like they hadn't prayed hard enough and they weren't going to be forgiven. But it was all a personal thing.
I mean, in some sense, if you hate sex as a culture, you don't want your men constantly talking to young teenage girls about sex, right?
Yeah.
So I can see why that would be not adopted, but in Mormonism it was. So you have 40, 50-year-old plumber bishop men talking to 12-year-old girls about if they touch themselves and where. And I don't mean to mischaracterize Mormonism, but that's a thing.
That's a thing. Yeah, I've heard that from other people who've escaped Mormonism and how creepy it was. I've heard it mostly from women, how creepy it was to have to do that. And even when nothing more creepy came out of it, I mean, and I'm sure lots of times more creepy came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
there's lots of, it seems like almost every month in Utah, there's another bishop who's discovered to have been abusing, teenage girls or boys in his congregation. It's way rampant. So that's interesting. Y'all escaped confession.
Yes.
So, but also like that self-imposed seeking of forgiveness with God can be more insidious sometimes.
Yeah.
With scrupulosity and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people, it ended up being an obsessive thing that really damaged them mentally, because I guess if you're never given any outward sign of it, like, okay, it's fine, like if your pastor can say, okay, it's fine, move on, you've atoned for this or whatever, then I guess you can let it go. But if it's just you just keep going over it in your head, maybe.
Interestingly, Mormonism, the Book of Mormon condemns like costly apparel and jewelry, but that's somehow been jettisoned in our culture.
I was going to say, I've seen Mormon lives of Mormon wives.
I know. There's parts that it's just weird how parts get left behind or forgotten or ignored.
Yeah.
Like for us, the meat eating thing, like Mormons love their meat.
Yeah.
But the Doctrine and Covenants Word of Wisdom prohibits it, but nobody cares. But then they really care about the coffee and the tea and the tobacco prohibition in the same chapter. Like we can be just so blind and selective in our observances.
Totally. Yeah.
How were there tips on how to police masturbation and how to fix and cure yourself from that temptation as a young child or teen or young adult? Like, how was that treated? And when I say treated, as if it's a disease, how was the disease of masturbation treated culturally in terms of solutions to prevent it or fix it?
That's a really, again, I'm not sure that there was a prescribed thing that everybody pointed to or a process that they went through. I know this book on becoming a woman he gives all these kind of platitudes of like, you should stay active and you should pursue your hobbies and call a friend and go out for a walk and, all that kind of stuff. But there
eat your Kellogg's cornflakes.
Exactly. Eat your Kellogg's cornflakes. Absolutely. But there was no accountability buddy types of stuff or anything that was, as far as I know anyway, that was put in I'm sure some people did it, but there was no wide scale implementation of something like that.
Yeah, we had cottage industry support groups and unethical therapists that parents pay for to help cure their kids of the addiction of masturbation.
Oh, yes. I'm sure there's that because obviously conversion therapy was the model for that. And I'm sure there was exactly the same thing with masturbation as well. Yeah.
Okay. So you were talking about the model woman. Mm-hmm. Education's fine, but stay at home and be a mom, have a couple kids, and be a wife.
Right.
And then what about patriarchy in the home versus not patriarchy in the home?
Definitely, we had the top-down patriarchal model, the famous umbrella model with God and then the husband and then the wife.
So the husband's the head.
The husband is definitely the head
of the family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Husband is the head, and the wife has to listen and obey to him. And Ellen tried to kind of talk out of both sides of her mouth, where she said that they're equal, but I guess that's what is that complementarianism or whatever, which isn't just. And then children were definitely the slaves of the mother, basically. So they were under her. And there was a lot of advice from Ellen about how the mother was supposed to control every aspect of her children's lives. And that was her main duty in life.
Okay. So, that's very similar. Kind of the patriarchal structure. And we even have this idea of the men preside. Mm-hmm. They're co-equals.
Right.
Husband and wife are co-equals, but the father presides.
Okay.
Presides and provides.
Okay.
But, the woman is to hearken unto the man.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Very similar. Almost identical. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we've talked about the role of women, the role of husband and wife, sexual mores, sexual shame, etc. Let's see. So as Ellen White and Kellogg die, how does the church progress in terms of its growth and management and that sort of thing?
Very interesting, because they do not have, the Mormons still have a living prophet all the time, right? And they did not. Ellen was one and done. And Kellogg, actually, she kind of shoved him out decades before. He didn't last all that long because he was too rich and too powerful, and she couldn't take the competition, basically. So
Wait,
Kellogg,
he left?
Yeah. So Kellogg died not an Adventist at all.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the co-founders of Mormonism all got excommunicated or left the church.
Exactly.
Do y'all have excommunication in your...
Not a formal, we do, definitely, but there is no huge process of it. It's not a formal process. And generally, as far as I've ever seen, people get excommunicated for doctrinal issues. They don't get excommunicated because, for instance, they've been molesting children or anything. But if they disagree with doctrine, or one pastor got excommunicated or threatened with excommunication because he was encouraging his church not to pay their tithes to the General Conference. He was encouraging them to pay their tithes to his church. Oh boy, that got him excommunicated real fast.
Okay, so y'all are more likely to excommunicate an apostate for doctrinal dissent than a pedophile for child abuse.
Behavioral, yeah.
Totally the same with us. Yeah, totally the same. Okay. So you do have a form of excommunication.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. And I'm not quite sure what it is, but it has to go through the conference level, and, people have to vote on it, and the management of the church has to vote on it and things.
Same with us. Okay. So how is dissent viewed in the church? Criticizing the leaders, criticizing the doctrine, disagreeing. How is that handled culturally and organizationally?
It's not handled very well. And you know, I'm not the best person to speak on it since I've been out for the past 3 decades, you know, so I can only say what I see from the outside. But they had the same General Conference president whose father had been General Conference president before that. So the span of like 50 years had been this man and his son were General Conference presidents, and they were very controlling, crusty old white men. And
what does General Conference mean in your context?
It is the worldwide governing body.
Okay.
So there are conferences within like every area. The United States has many different conferences, and then there's a separate conference for the Black constituents.
Oh,
which is
segregated.
Yeah, we have a segregated conference.
Even
still,
now?
to this day.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
Apartheid.
Yeah. It's.
I did not know that.
And there are all kinds of excuses made about it. And
wait, so white and Black Seventh-day Adventists don't share congregations?
You know, they do. Certainly all the churches that I attended had, you know, pretty much representation. They were primarily white, but representation from everybody. And of course, because they're such aggressive missionaries, you always have all these mission immigrants too. But the African-American Adventist churches, and they even have at least one college that is primarily African-American, are definitely distinct, and I'm not quite sure. I don't know what the explanation is. My father was an Adventist pastor, and I asked him about it once, and he said, well, it's because the African Americans wanted it that way. And I was like,
yeah, blame the victim.
Right, exactly. And I was like, gosh, I wonder why they might have wanted it that way.
That's like the slaves really loved their setup with the plantation.
Exactly,
Massa took really good care of them. You know,
exactly, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh, maybe you guys were so horrible they couldn't exist within your system.
So do you know if historically Seventh-day Adventist leaders were opposed to segregation, like during the Civil Rights Movement, that kind of thing?
Again, they love to speak out of both sides of their mouth. So apparently Ellen White said some very horrible, horrible things about Black people in kind of
antebellum kind
Yeah, exactly. And then when she realized that she could really grow her church if she changed her tune, then all of a sudden she was very pro, let's reach out to the freed slaves and you know. But she really said horrible things. And even up until when I was in high school, mixed race marriage was definitely the whisper forbidden thing. Like
Same with us.
Yeah, you just didn't. It was not encouraged. It was not allowed. You weren't even allowed to date anyone that wasn't of your particular look, whatever it was. You know.
Very similar.
Yeah, we had at my school there was a large influx of Filipino immigrants at one point, and you know it was certainly not encouraged to mix.
And Joseph Smith was definitely on both sides of the slavery fence at different points in his life, and Brigham Young has horrendously racist quotes, and Brigham Young implemented a racist teaching around the curse of Cain and you know, Black people not being members in full standing that lasted until 1978.
Yeah, and Native Americans also. The Mormons were horrifying to the Native Americans.
In different ways, yeah. So we've got a lot of that, and we definitely didn't like the Civil Rights Movement or segregation.
Yeah.
But now we love Black people, you know?
Right,
it's our focus.
Gotta grow the membership of the church. Yes, but I would imagine your missionary outreach stuff was probably similar to ours also, which is just so fundamentally racist. Like I was taught that anyone out there in the mission field was a devil culture, and particularly if they had drumming involved in their cultures, which of course is most everyone except for white white European mutts. So the Native Americans were vilified, the Africans were vilified because they had drumming and dancing and they were half naked. And so they were from the devil. It was from the devil. And the devil got into your soul through the drum beat. And fundamentally very racist, even if they're not saying that it, but just horribly racist. And I'm sure it's still going on to this day.
So that term mission field was in Mormonism was basically anything outside of Utah was referred to as the mission field.
Yes.
But I had to say this, twice a year, we have a global annual conference for our membership. Guess what it's called?
Oh, no.
What's it called?
The mission, I don't know.
General Conference.
The General Conference. Oh, God.
So I know you were back on the racing, but I'm just saying General Conference is a term we use very broadly. Yeah,
I've heard that in reference to the Mormons, and I assumed it was similar, but that is totally funny. And is it always held here in the United States?
In
ours is too. It's never been held outside, even though the membership of the Adventist Church is way bigger at this point outside of the United States. But General Conference, still right here.
So we both have that General Conference like tradition and the mission field tradition and the racism tradition. But now the Mormon Church is all about Africa.
That's it. Yes. Oh, all about Africa.
I swear these cults, high demand religions have the same lawyers. They have the same accountants. They have the same marketing people.
Sounds
because we are following such similar playbooks.
Yep.
There has to be communication.
Isn't that funny? But yet, we're all unique. We're the one true.
We're the one true. So y'all are the one true.
Yeah,
too,
but they are. They share everything. The exact same way that they deal with predators. And, And the Adventists hate the Catholics so much. I always love saying, you do it just like the Catholics.
Fascinating. This is so great. I'm loving this. All right. So one thing that let's talk about your parochial school system, your hospitals, and your media networks.
Yeah. Very fascinating. So the Adventist Church always comes up in the top 10 lists of the richest churches in the world. Of course, the Mormons are always the top slot. And then various iterations. They divide the Catholic Church into several, like the German
Diocese
Catholic Church and the something. And so Adventists are usually about 4th or 5th on the richest. Sometimes they drop to 6th richest. And then on the lists of the largest medical systems in the world and the largest educational systems in the world, Adventists are, again, consistently like 3rd or 4th place.
Really?
Usually behind several versions of Catholics, and sometimes I think the Mormons, probably not with medicine, but maybe with education, probably. So the Adventists have been huge on both of those. The medical thing is something that they are very proud of. It's part of this since Kellogg. It's been part of their thing. Again, Loma Linda Medical School. To become an Adventist doctor is, basically most of the men in my family for 3 generations, that's what they did. They all went to Loma Linda and they became Adventist doctors, And they have now what's called Advent Health, which is all over the world. It's enormous. They have hospitals, clinics, everything. They got a big bump, unfortunately, about 15 years ago, I guess, from Dan Buettner, who wrote the Blue Zones. He did this whole thing for National Geographic.
My wife is totally into the Blue Zones.
There you go.
I'm like, those Seventh-day Adventists are one of the Blue Zone groups.
Yeah.
And where are they? What town are they centralized where they would have been
Loma
identified?
Linda. It's around.
So it is Loma Linda.
Yeah, it's around the medical school. There is where they've been designated a Blue Zone, and they are so proud of it. Even though about 5 years ago the Blue Zones were partially Let me start with Dan Buettner. Eventually sold the whole Blue Zones. At that point, It was an empire of books and recipes and whatever the heck else. Personal training. I don't know what else it was, but he sold it to Advent Health. So now Advent Health uses the Blue Zones as their own personal marketing. So they've produced, I think there was a TV special about it a couple of years ago. So that was Adventist produced, I believe. It was no longer Dan Buettner. So the Blue Zones is no longer at all an independent assessment. And it is Adventist bragging about Loma Linda being a Blue Zone. But And I'm not quite sure what else Advent Health has other than, I don't know if they've ventured into health insurance also, or if they are simply clinics, hospitals, medical groups. But they are one of the third or fourth largest in the world. And then educationally, same thing. Adventists have colleges all over the world. They have.
What does parochial school mean? Mormons don't even know what that word means. So you have elementary K through 12?
That's it. It's basically just K through 12 private school.
All over the United States?
All over we have, oh my gosh, like probably hundreds.
See, I've heard of Catholic private schools, but I've never heard of Seventh-day Adventist private schools.
Nobody's ever heard of the Adventists. I know, it's really bizarre, isn't it?
Where are you? And I also saw you don't have like a necessarily, even though Loma Linda's mentioned, you're not known for having a geographic center, even though Michigan, you say Michigan was a big deal, but like it's not like y'all cluster in a state.
That's right.
But then I've heard nothing in Utah about Seventh-day Adventists in Utah. So they must not be a lot here, or are they just super low-key?
They're very low-key.
Under the radar.
They are always under the radar, and I think that's very much by design.
Do they not compete like in high school athletics?
They don't. They're not allowed. They're not allowed.
Oh, that's huge. Because in Salt Lake, you would hear about Duge, which is a Catholic private school.
Yes.
You would hear about the Catholic private schools through the athletics.
Right.
So y'all avoid that by not involved.
Yes. They don't compete in anything. Ellen White said that competition, again, incited the baser whatever evils, but also so much stuff happens on Saturdays, and it's not, so, they don't do debate societies. They don't do any athletics.
Interesting.
They don't do, and athletics were an Ellen White no also.
Because they're fun, right?
That's
fun.
That's right. They're fun. Plus they're sweaty bodies. I mean, who knows what happens with sweaty bodies, I guess. There was no kind of, I'm trying to think if there was any kind of competition in my high school. We belonged to the National Honor Society and stuff like that, but that generally didn't involve mingling with others. I mean, it's definitely, Adventists do not encourage mingling with others at all.
Okay, so that's huge. So with Mormonism, there's this idea of being in the world but not of the world.
We have that very same phrase, yes, but we don't do it.
Because we do go to public schools, and we do athletics, and we do hyperachievement and extracurricular stuff.
Yeah.
So y'all, an Orthodox Seventh-day Adventist in the United States would start K through 12 in a private school and never really intermingle with the host town population.
Exactly.
That's huge.
It's enormous. I mean, that is huge.
Whoa.
And you are very looked down on if you allow your children to go outside of the Adventist system, no matter how, it is expensive. It is private school education.
Okay,
but
so this is getting Scientology vibes. So it's really expensive to get educated.
Right, but people
which is indoctrinated, right?
Right, exactly. Oh, yeah. But people are guilted, shamed, etc., into making sure that their children do not set foot in a public education institution or
but
a
it's
Catholic
not
school.
It's not homeschooling.
We were encouraged, the more fringy, freaky people, I was homeschooled until 4th grade, as was my sister. The more fringy, freaky people do homeschool their kids pretty much primarily, but Adventist schools are generally considered the way to go at this point, and people will be obsessive about it. I know my grandparents, when my mom's parents, when my grandfather got out of World War II service in the Army, they had a choice of where they would move, and they were looking at Santa Barbara, which is the absolutely most beautiful place in the world, or Chula Vista, California, which was like a dirt pit. And they chose Chula Vista because there was an Adventist school for their children. And those are the kinds of choices that people make. And then a lot of people, and thank goodness I didn't have this experience, but once you graduate, there are all these K through 8 schools pretty much anywhere you live in the United States. You can probably, if you organize your life right, be close enough to an Adventist K through 8 thing, or you can homeschool. But for high school, a lot of people had to go to Adventist boarding schools, and there are some good ones, and then there are some really bad ones where a lot of bad stuff happens, and then there are what they call self-supporting And those are the really fringy, freaky ones. Those are ones where Dr. Phil actually sent some like troubled teen kids to some of the Adventist ones that have really horrific track records of really awful, the troubled teen industry is just rife with awful stuff.
Which Utah's big in, by the way.
Yes, Utah's huge in.
Yeah.
I actually know a few kids who were sent to Utah for troubled. Yes, exactly.
How much does it cost on average, would you say, in the U.S. annually to send your kids to, let's just say, K through 5 versus middle school versus high school? Do you know what a parent might shell out?
I should have looked up, but I mean, it's comparable, I know, to just your average private school, to a Catholic school, to anything else.
$10,000 or whatever.
I'm imagining, multiple grands per year. Yeah, I don't know. And again, college, I'm not sure. And colleges, we were all supposed to go to Adventist colleges, particularly women, because how would you meet an Adventist husband if you didn't go to an Adventist college? And when we talk about my book, I'll talk about the ways that they tried to prevent us from being able to apply to public colleges or private colleges that weren't Adventist.
Okay, yeah.
They had lots of sneaky ways to make it hard for us.
So I'm seeing, this is just Google, elementary range is 4,000 to 9,000 annually. Can you imagine? Oh, you don't have a lot of kids, so that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I have two, but still, yeah.
No, I'm saying a Seventh-day Adventist family wouldn't have necessarily 6 or 8 kids.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But even a couple could be 10 to 20 grand a year just for K through 8.
Yep.
And then it's saying junior high is 4 to 11,000, and then high school is 8 to 14,000 plus.
Yes, and the boarding schools I know are like 20 grand or so.
Boarding schools.
Yeah, for the boarding schools.
Wow. Okay, that's a big deal.
And a lot of kids have to go to boarding school because they don't live close enough to. So yeah, it's big. It's kind of.
And then also, BYU, weirdly, is super cheap. It's super affordable for members.
Yeah.
So how many Seventh-day Adventist colleges or universities do you think there are in the U.S.? Like 2 or 10?
No. I'd say between 10 and 20, maybe.
Okay, a lot.
There are a lot.
What's the biggest, most well-known one? Do you have like a Notre Dame?
Probably La Sierra, which is associated with Loma Linda. It's in that blue zone area. La Sierra College. Then also Andrews University, which is in Michigan. When the center. So there are several. We were talking about this, whether it's centralized. There are several big hubs of Adventists. One of them is Loma Linda. The General Conference is outside of Washington, D.C. Got to keep your fingers in the politics.
Okay.
And then there's still a big hub in Michigan, and it moved from Battle Creek to a place called Berrien Springs, which is very close to Lake Michigan and kind of around the bottom of the lake there from Chicago. And they have the seminary there. And so there's a huge university there that's kind of like a seminary feeder, and that's called Andrews University. And so that's another big college. But there are a couple in the South, and there was one in Maryland. I don't know, probably 10 to 15 probably in the United States, I would say.
And the annual tuition of one of those top-notch Seventh-day Adventists?
Got to be 20 grand or more, I would think.
So private school,
it's private school. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Wow. So very insular. Okay, the other thing is, and I guess I want to, if it's okay, like I never know, like I noticed in a Baptist church or a Catholic church or even a Greek Orthodox church or a temple or a mosque or a Mormon church, like you see those around. I don't ever note like, oh, there's a Seventh-day Adventist chapel. Yes. Do they have signs? Am I just not looking for them? Like,
they do, but of course they're very low key. They're very plain buildings, and again, I swear to God, it goes back to the Catholics, like ornamentation and idols and this and that. We're not that. We're not the Catholics. So like the Adventist churches are very plain. There are no creches with Marys or
big crosses,
really not even any crucifixes. Like they take the do not have any graven images really seriously. And so even their stained glass windows are very discreet, and it's just like kind of abstract flowers.
So y'all don't do the cross as a main symbol?
If so, it's discreet. It's
Okay.
not, there's no gruesome, like Jesus bloody and dripping type of stuff generally. You can find it, but it's not a big theme. But there are crosses, like kind of stylized crosses with roses and whatever, But the churches are generally kind of 60s looking. They're very easy to miss.
Interesting.
But I see them and I flip them off every time I see them.
Y'all are so under the radar.
So under the radar.
Which is interesting because like again, Mormons are going for gaudy these days. So our temples, we're building them everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're the gaudiest buildings in any town. And the inside is super gaudy and chandeliers and gold. And so it's interesting how like cults or high demand religions can be like, all right, what do we do with jewelry? Jewelry or no jewelry? Alcohol or no alcohol? Saturday or Sunday? Totally. Discreet, insular, integrated. Like, and there are ramifications. But y'all are almost twice as big as we are, started at a similar time. So it's interesting how some of the decisions you've made, I don't think you're as wealthy as we are.
Definitely not.
You're not as well known as we are, but you have a stronger worldwide membership than we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Adventists are definitely not encouraged. There's a frowning upon chasing mammon, right? You don't want to be too rich, but then you definitely don't want to be poor either. So there's this fine line that it's
Mormons
all about,
love it if you're rich.
Yeah,
like Marriotts and Romneys and like Huntsmans, we're all about becoming a billionaire if you can.
Yeah, which is definitely different. And Adventists, if they are rich, are very kind of still dowdy and not very showy.
Well, that's why y'all aren't as rich as us.
Exactly.
You got to get on the billionaire bandwagon.
I know.
Seventh-day Adventists.
We messed up.
Why would you discourage billionaires?
I know. Yeah, and paying double tithe.
So y'all are tithing.
Tithe is 10%. I mean, I had to start paying tithe on my allowance when I was 4 or 5 years old. Jesus and I have had a beef, I think, since about then. But
what's double tithing?
So double tithe is 20%.
Who does that?
My dad.
Just the ultra devout.
The ultra devout.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's a Sunday? What's a local congregation? How many people? Who runs it? How is it managed?
Ooh.
What's a Saturday service? And, activities, youth activities, women's activities, kids' activities.
Yeah.
What's all that structure like?
I'm sure it's changed since I left the church, so I can only speak as to what I was familiar with. But you have everything from the little rural 25 to 100-person little churches with one pastor to where I went to school in high school. I went to the Pioneer Memorial Church, which was the one associated there in Berrien Springs, Michigan, with the seminary and with Andrews University. It was huge. Thousands of people, gigantic building, again, very plain.
Like a megachurch.
But a megachurch, pretty much. And I remember it being a huge thing. So it was the very last gasp of the 80s when I was checking out, and the pastor that everybody loved was proposing televising the show. That was a huge scandal. How dare he go Hollywood? And he was, I think, just proposing putting a camera so that people could watch it on their TV at home if they were sick or something.
Oh my gosh. Joel Osteen vibes.
Yeah, it was a no-go for a long time, but then eventually they did, and they got video screens up there and everything, so they did eventually join the technology generation, but it's very sober, as with everything Adventist. Organ music, choir.
Same.
Piano.
So not like hyper charismatic preaching.
Yes. Oh, no hyper. Yeah. There is nobody is even allowed to say amen or anything loudly.
Same with us.
It's very pious and
no clapping.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Yeah. People would have, which was crazy to me because, of course, that was my only experience. Adventist Academy graduations are held in your church generally. And so it was always this dignified, solemn, we got our diplomas and we went and we sat down and then, organ blasted pomp and circumstance and out we walked. And then to contrast that when my kids graduated from public school and like the riotous celebration of it all and people screaming and air horns and like bagpipes and like, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it's like to have fun in high school and graduate. But Adventist churches, no. They don't host any other functions. I know Catholic churches now will host like drama or whatever inside. Adventist churches are not available for anything except for weddings, funerals, and church services. And
that's pretty similar to us.
Yeah.
We do marriages in temples, but we do wedding receptions in chapels.
Okay.
And but the church is pretty much only for church. Services.
Yeah.
Really quickly, did y'all start with like Pentecostal speaking in tongues kind of stuff during Ellen White's time, and then it was filtered out? Because that's how it was for us. We're dour now, but we didn't used to be.
Apparently not.
Okay.
Apparently Ellen had her little Pentecostal-y thing when she was whatever the Pentecostal Methodist type of hybrid was. But once they even had some kind of religious kissing or something. I don't know. She was very scandalous at that period. But by the time it was the Adventist Church, it was very sober and grim and dour.
How's a congregation organized or managed in terms of duties, responsibilities, leadership positions?
Yes. So there's a lead pastor, and if it's a huge church, there are several sub-pastors, of course. There's always a youth pastor. There are elders and deacons. And elders have some sort of function that I'm not quite sure. They kind of function between the pastoral staff and just the regular church people. Then the deacons do just the church administrative stuff, like dismissing rows of people after church. They pass the offering plate. They do, that kind of labor sort of stuff. And they are, I think elders and deacons are volunteer only. I guess women are now allowed to preach and even be like sort of pastors of a church, but they're not allowed to be ordained. Go figure. But other than that, they really don't hold much church function. I know there are women who work for the General Conference. There are treasurers and whatever, and I'm sure that happens in the regular church stuff too, that women are allowed to have behind-the-scenes things. But as far as front-facing, other than maybe a choir director possibly, women are not. They are not seen or heard.
So we have elders, we have deacons, we have male leadership, and women mostly behind the scenes.
Yeah. Oh, communion. Let's talk about communion.
Okay.
Because again, not the Catholics.
So no transubstantiation, I'm guessing.
Right. And no wine. So Adventists use grape juice. You guys use grape juice,
We used to use wine, then we use grape juice, now we use water. But,
water.
But originally it was grape juice and wine. Yeah.
Okay. So Adventists use grape juice and little wafers, and there's no transubstantiation. This is the symbol of, and they always make a big point of saying that. And you don't go up like the Catholics, and the preacher doesn't give it to you. It's just passed in trays.
Same with us.
And of course, as a kid, you're like, why does everybody else get to have juice and crackers in church today? And you can't have it until you're baptized, and Adventists baptized at around 12.
We're 8.
Okay, there you go. When, and I'm sure it's very similar for you guys, we aren't allowed to make any of our own decisions until we're out of the house, right? If I were to choose at the age of 12 to decide I want to eat shrimp or bacon, oh, hell no, that would never be allowed. But they give you this false autonomy at 12 to, you can't get baptized before then because you have to make a conscious decision. It has to be your decision that you're choosing the church and God and all of that.
Because there's no influence. There's no parental or social influence at all.
None whatsoever. You are choosing of your own volition, your own adult, full choice. So, so communion, and it only happens every 13 weeks, I think, 12 or 13 weeks.
We're weekly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then do you guys do foot washing?
We do, but it's a super secret service called the Second Anointing. And most Mormons don't know about it, but we've covered it on Mormon Stories. But Joseph Smith did foot washing. Jesus did foot washing.
Right.
And elite, rich, select Mormons get the second anointing, which includes foot washing. What do y'all do with foot washing?
Do they wash each other's feet? Do we know how that works, or is it like because like Jesus washed other people's feet? And
I think at least a wife washes a husband's feet in the second anointing ordinance in the temple, but I'm unclear whether an apostle washes the wife and the husband's feet, or whether the wife just washes the husband's feet. But some of that goes on in the temple as part of a secret ordinance that most Mormons don't even know about, let alone receive. How does it work for you?
Oh my gosh. So foot washing is usually associated with communion. I don't think it always happens on communion day, but somehow they are often done on the same day. And it's the grossest thing ever. It is basically they divide into a men's room and a women's room, and what you're supposed to do is choose someone that you don't know, or they choose you, and you're supposed to just humble yourself and wash your feet, and so, or you just get paired up. They'll just like grab two people who come through the door and assign you over there with your basin of water and stuff. And so, of course, as like 13, 14-year-old kids, we ended up washing like 85-year-old women's feet with their like nasty pantyhose on or whatever. Oh my God, it was the grossest thing. I mean, a lot of us have nightmares.
Corns and bunions.
Yes, corns and bunions. And and boys have the same stories about like old men's crusty feet or whatever and their toenails. And I mean, it was the most traumatizing.
At least teenage girls aren't washing old men's feet.
Yes. Well, that's it. And apparently now they have couples rooms where you can go in with I don't know if you can do it probably not if you're not married, but married couples can go do it for each other so that at least they don't. Yeah. But yeah, it was just random.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we share that in a way.
In a way we do that.
Interesting.
So funny.
Yeah. Wow. But it's way more ubiquitous for y'all.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Interesting. And how often was the foot washing thing?
It, I think, happens every 13 weeks along with communion. It seems like foot washing didn't happen quite as regularly. So maybe twice a year or something.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's kind of at the discretion of the pastor and the management. So I'm sure there's some weird creepies out there that make it happen more often.
Do y'all have healings of the sick through laying on of hands?
Oh my gosh. I remember hearing about that. And they do it when people are dying. They do an oil and anointment
We do
ceremony.
Oil and anointment, yeah.
Okay. It always makes me giggle because my mom, when her father was dying, they asked for olive oil. I guess it has to be olive oil, right?
Yep,
Jesus, whatever.
Yep. See?
And my grandmother kept olive oil in the fridge, so they didn't have any available that was liquid at the time. It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom just grabbed some Crisco out from, my mom's a very practical woman, grabbed the Crisco out from underneath the whatever, and she was like, "This'll do, this is fine." And we were all like, "Mom, it's supposed to be olive oil. Like, what are you doing to your father? He's dying, and you're gonna like
But it sounds like that's
Crisco on his head?"
been kind of de-emphasized over time.
I think so, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the healing and laying on of hands, I definitely remember that. It feels like my father was involved in that because he was both a doctor and a pastor, and seems like they did do that kind of stuff. I just don't have much recall of exactly what it was.
Interesting. But choirs, yes.
Choirs, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, choir is definitely. But again, no like super exciting, you see these robust, amazing, like African-American churches who have these like incredible choirs. Ours were never that incredible. They were just kind of sober singing.
Okay, so if it's not too aversive for you, I do want to talk about maybe some of the perceived positive things about, at least a few of them, about your culture or practice.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously, do you feel like by the time an average Seventh-day Adventist in the United States reaches adulthood, they have a pretty good education, even if it's kind of a little bit culty or brainwashy?
I felt like I got a very good education. I went on to a really great college and that was not Adventist, and it was a positive. The education was a positive experience for me, even though, of course, we had creationism, so there was no, sciences were pretty light, but I wasn't a science kid anyway.
So no evolution
no evolution at all.
What about how old was the Earth? Was it young Earth?
6,000 years.
So we have that.
Yeah.
We have 6,000 years and no evolution. Okay.
No evolution.
The literal Adam and Eve.
Yes, literal
global flood with Noah's Ark.
Yes,
so
exactly.
We're the same there. Yeah.
Dinosaurs were kind of a don't ask, don't tell. I've heard that you guys have a strange thing about dinosaurs, right?
That dinosaurs lived on other planets, but when God reorganized Earth, he took material from other planets, because material is eternal, created Earth, and the dinosaur fossils were remnants of animals, because obviously dinosaurs don't meet the 6,000 year timeline.
Right.
So a lot of us were taught that kind of weird folk doctrine growing up.
So as far as I recall, we ignored the whole 6,000 year deadline that the dinosaurs were killed in the flood.
Okay.
But now too. I'm sure they've had with carbon dating and all that stuff, because I left in the late 80s, so there was not that much disproving that Adventists had to be faced with, had to be smacked upside the head with, that has happened since. So I think they were just ignoring science at that point and saying dinosaurs were killed in the flood. But now I think they accept that dinosaurs and that the Earth is probably not just 6,000 years old. And then what other? I never heard anyone be flat earthy.
No, we're not that.
But let's see what other kinds of strange. So I felt like we got a great education in, I learned to write well, and those kinds of things. We had all the great math and whatever. Science was light, and of course classics. We weren't allowed to study the classics because the Greeks were all gay, and they were sinful and were debauched. So we weren't allowed to study Latin. We studied a lot of languages, but no Latin, and no reading the classics.
Stay away from Rome and Greece.
Right.
Caligula and the Romans.
Right, exactly.
All the
Bacchus.
pedophiles in the Roman Legion.
No, only homegrown pedophiles were allowed, not
gosh,
Greek.
That's so dark.
Not the classical ones. So, I didn't feel like I got a very broad education, but what I did get was good quality. I have heard from others, though, that, I think I was very fortunate because we were probably in that university and seminary setting, that we had a lot of really good teachers who had come there for one thing or another. I've heard from others that their Adventist education was abominable, and they felt like they got to college and knew nothing. So I don't know. I guess it was luck of the draw, maybe, but I certainly, that's one of the few things that I really value.
Y'all have a thing about pacifism, is that right?
Yes.
Now that seems good to me in my values.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yes. We were actually, the only thing that I think is not so great about it is it was basically kind of forced. So we were taken away on a retreat, all of us, even the girls, our senior year when ostensibly most of the boys were turning 18. And we had a weekend basically lecture about pacifism and do not kill and blah, blah, blah. And they were all encouraged. And I don't know if they even had their selective service paperwork that they could fill out then or not, but they were encouraged to be what do they call that? Conscientious objectors. And, there's that very famous movie about the Seventh-day Adventist Desmond Doss, I think his name was, that was made into Hacksaw Ridge. That was about him, good Adventist boy, being a conscientious objector and saving 1 million people in World War II. And of course, that wasn't out when we were taken for art, but I'm sure they heavily use that movie now as their propaganda. But I think it's wonderful that I don't know that I would ever even known that was an option at that age if the school hadn't made us aware of it, that you could say, no, I'm not going to take a gun and go kill people.
Yeah. And then other than we've already talked about the blue zone kind of health, how can it be net bad to have a general prohibition of alcohol and tobacco and minimal meat and lots of vegetables? Like that's just flat out going to lead to healthier society.
Yeah.
So that, I'm sure you would say that's a relatively positive thing.
Yeah, I think, again, it's the control part of it is the issue for me, is that it was so heavily weighted as an ethical issue, as a moral issue, that we kids were terrified of overstepping it. And so that caused a lot of anxiety and caused a lot of eating disorders, a lot of when we talk about my book, I had an older sister and she was tortured for her food. She liked food a lot more than I did. And so it became this huge thing that she still has not gotten over, and she's nearly 60. And a lot of that was extremism of the Adventist health message. And so it can be taken to extreme. But the basics, the fundamentals, other than the fact that spices are bad and inflame your lust, but like the fundamentals. Oh,
so y'all are today not so good on spicy foods.
Well, it's changed because they're so targeting the mission field, where again, everyone generally has more spicy.
So things are getting watered down. Mm-hmm. But 20, 30, 40 years ago, spicy foods were discouraged.
Banned.
Banned.
Like
wow.
Like I said,
so
we
like
had
hot sauce.
Yeah, we
Tabasco.
had no mustard. Even we weren't allowed to use mustard. We weren't allowed to use pepper.
What?
Pepper was from the devil, etc. And now when I talk to much younger ex-Adventists who were from Argentina or Peru or whatever, and they're like, we never in a million years ever heard in Adventist school that spices were bad. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, you probably didn't, because that message didn't sell there. So they just forgot it.
That's so wild. It really is like a business.
It is a business. It is a business.
You figure out your market.
Yep.
You know your market.
Yep.
And you tailor your product for your local market.
Yeah. I even saw one of the more liberal Adventist publications was just publishing a couple of days ago something like that, where I was like, wow, they're just saying the quiet part out loud, aren't they? Where it was basically, maybe our message about end times isn't selling well. Like it brings people in during bad times, but it doesn't seem to sell well in good times. So maybe we should revamp that. And it was like, was it a message from God or was it not? Because why are you all of a sudden like, maybe it's not selling, so perhaps we'll set it aside. Yeah,
in 2026, ex-Mormons are up in arms because the church is in this because of the internet.
Yes.
And the global expansion, the Mormon church and the contraction of membership in the United States. The Mormon church is in heavy adaptation mode.
Yes.
And so, like all of a sudden women can show their shoulders and all of a sudden Coke is served at BYU.
Yeah.
And, the temple ceremony keeps changing. And ex-Mormons now are furious that things that were really bad and forbidden when they were growing up is now allowed.
Right, yeah.
And instead of being happy for all the positive changes, they're kind of angry.
Yeah.
That the
because
church
again,
is
I think it was sold as a moral and an ethical issue. And it wasn't about the Coke after all, was it? It was about, you told us we were going to hell for it. And now it's, so that's my only beef with the dietary rules.
No pun intended.
And the fact that, I don't know about more. Well, yeah, there's hypocrisy just baked into it. Like the Adventists are really, they make this, which I think is really tasty. I love some of it. And they have for 100 years made fake meat. They made fake meat way before it was a health thing. Worthington Foods, oh my gosh, fried chick. I will jump over large objects for fry chick. It's basically, I think it's soy-based, but it was
like a chicken substitute?
Yeah, like a chicken substitute. And they're these little patties, and you can fry them up, and they're like chicken nuggets, but they're really good.
Who made them?
It's, I think, Worthington Foods, and now I think it's called Loma Linda Foods.
Were they Seventh-day Adventist based?
Seventh-day Adventist from the get-go. And they've been making them for literally, I think, 100 years. And, way back before vegetarian food was a thing, they had all these veggie meats. And
so like Impossible Meat kind of stuff.
Right. Impossible Burgers since way before. And so you'd think that's a great thing. But I mean, a can of fried chick, which I can down in one sitting, has, I think, 3 days worth of sodium in it. It has such high saturated fat. It's got so many ingredients that I can't even pronounce, and it's just like, is that health food?
Okay.
So again, the hypocrisy is sort of, and sugar, oh my gosh, my mother will not have meat in her house, but the cupcakes and cookies and things stacked everywhere. Can't have lard in any of the cookies or cupcakes because that's a pig product. But you can have high saturated fat out the wazoo. You can have, icing this thick, So again, the hypocrisy, like, is it a healthy diet? If you really follow it, yes. But how many actually follow it?
Yeah, Mormons have a huge sugar problem. They don't do alcohol, but they surely do sugar and large. We all know now very large sodas and dirty sodas. That's becoming a national thing. But we also have, we have this irony that we won't drink coffee or tea, but we'll have huge Diet Cokes or monster drinks and energy drinks, which are way worse for you than a coffee, right?
Yes. Oh, which I've never even had because they scare me.
Yeah. But do y'all have an obesity problem? Because we do. We have an obesity problem.
Definitely. Okay. I mean, places like Loma Linda, again, California has a,
unique culture.
It's a healthier place out there where the sun always shines and people are outdoors. But in general, absolutely. I think the obesity problem is probably fairly similar to the general American population, maybe a little bit lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do want to ask about one last thing that I'm guessing is actually very positive. Whenever they've studied why actively religious people on average are a little bit happier or healthier than non-active religious people, it's almost always the community element that's teased out.
Right.
I'm guessing Seventh-day Adventist communities locally can be very beautiful. Tell me if that's right or wrong, and describe what an average growing up as a child into adulthood, and we can talk about yours in the next episode. But generally speaking, do y'all do community pretty well with caveats?
Ooh. Again, that's a hard one for me to answer because our family was very different and weird. We were not the average Adventist family in that way. So we'll talk about that. There are a lot of fun elements, like the Adventists have something called Pathfinders for kids, which is basically a Girl Scout, Boy Scout hybrid. It's both sexes, just everybody can join the same crew. They do a lot of the same stuff. They have the little sashes with the badges, and you learn to tie knots, and you learn to, whatever. And they go on camping trips, and they learn survival skills for end times, And so that seems like that's really positive. I was never allowed to do that, but it seems like that's a really fun thing when kids aren't allowed to do other stuff with non-Adventists. That's a really cool.
Was that ever offered outside your church? Because the Mormon Church had to jettison Boy Scouts because of all the child sexual abuse, but they haven't been able to come up with a good replacement. I'm surprised they didn't borrow your program.
Well, as far as I know, it's only been an Adventist institution. I don't think they've opened it to anyone else or like seed programmed it anywhere else. It also has a big sexual abuse problem, just like the Boy Scouts.
Okay.
And we'll cover that more. That is why I was not allowed to do it. But
really?
Yeah.
Your parents
But
knew
I only found out much, much later why.
Dang,
but
okay.
Yeah, that's our teaser in this episode for join us next time. Okay. So that part is good. Adventists are just not, as far as I ever saw, not terribly social.
With each other.
With each other either. I mean, there are potlucks after church, which is a really fun time. Potluck was always a great thing to look forward to. And schools did wonderful social things. We had banquets because, of course, we couldn't have proms because proms involve dancing. But so you just got together and ate and got all dressed up. And but Adventists are so, and again, maybe this is my family coloring it a bit, which I'm sure is true, but Adventists are so steeped in judgment. Judgment is righteous, and it doesn't just stop with Jesus in the whatever millennium and whatever. Judgment is a good thing in general. And so I just remember everyone being in the Adventist community being secretly just judgy, just judging everybody. People weren't doing this, people weren't doing that, these people were this and that. There was a constant hierarchy of who was good, who was bad, etc. Mrs. So-and-so thinks she's too fancy. She always sits in the same place in church. I mean, it was just endless, like, but that again might have just been the environment, that my immediate environment. But I do think that it came down from Ellen White a bit, where being social in general and having fun was not allowed. It was not encouraged. That's a waste of time. It could better be spent praying and reading your Bible and reading your Ellen White. And so having a great time was not a priority for Adventist culture ever. And also there was this whole thing, particularly with women, that, and I think maybe it's biblical, that women getting together, bad things happen. It's gossip. And so there were no major women's circle fun things that I can remember seeing really encouraged.
Do y'all have a robust youth program kind of thing?
Youth programs, again, there was always a youth pastor, and then Pathfinders. Pathfinders could go up to like teenage years if you wanted it to, kind of like the Eagle Scout or whatever thing. But usually that was kind of an elementary school thing. And then usually the youth stuff centered around your school more than your church.
Oh, because you're a school with all Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah. Exactly. So we had all kinds of school programs and volunteer stuff that we did together, and we would go out and weed the garden for the local old people's home, or just all that kind of stuff that we did together.
Do you have weird rules about dating as teenagers?
Oh yes. Marriage and family class we really weren't supposed to date seriously. That was just a bad thing. But people did, and there were no hard and fast like no touching or side hugs or whatever. A lot of that I think is codified in other religions. We never had that particular stuff. It was always just very tightly watched over by school administration. Anytime there was a field trip or there was a banquet or anything, because again, no proms, but banquets, you had to sit a certain amount of width apart and no holding hands. They would go around and do hand checks and that kind of stuff. So,
okay. And were y'all okay with? I know Jehovah's Witnesses have a problem with birthdays and Pledge of Allegiance. You're okay with those things?
No, we had no rules on either of those. Yeah,
so patriotism's okay.
Yeah, patriotism was okay. In fact, a lot of Adventists are very MAGA now. Very,
okay.
But we did the Pledge of Allegiance in school, and birthdays, Christmas, Easter, everything is celebrated. We weren't allowed to believe in Santa or the Easter Bunny. That was like false idling or whatever. But you could still do the Easter egg hunt, and as long as you went to church and they talked to you about what the real meaning every year. It's the real meaning of Easter. And same thing for Christmas. But we had Christmas trees and presents and, birthdays.
Now, wait, was your Easter on Sunday or was your Easter on?
Easter was on Sunday, but they do church on Saturday. Okay. And there's a whole, all of Saturday before is looking, often there's the emphasis of this is when Jesus was dead. And they talk about the fact that, and tomorrow he will rise and we will all celebrate his rising. But we didn't have to have a service on that day.
Okay, so that explains youth programs. That makes a lot of sense. But what about like somebody sick, casserole food trains, that kind of thing? Like member support of each other when people are poor or sick or needy or afflicted, or there's a death, funerals, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those were as far as my experience, those were always just kind of locally organized with just the people who knew them. It was never like a stand up in the front of the pulpit and say, okay, everybody, on Wednesday, we're going to do this and that. But there are lots of outreach organizations. Forever, my mother worked in what was called Dorcas, which was the kind of like the equivalent of Goodwill or Salvation Army, but they just gave things away. It wasn't a shopping thing, but that's where all Adventists would donate their goods, and then the Adventist ladies would sort them and clean them and then give them out to people in the church that they knew needed them, or anyone who was poor in the church could come and get things. So most of the larger church areas has a Dorcas where that's just known, and food is there also. So that must have, and again, I was never old enough to participate in those, but that must have some official structure of running and organizing those things, because it is pretty ubiquitous. And they even do some outreach to non-Adventists. That Dorcas is primarily to benefit Adventist members, but they do organized outreach too. Right now, they're sponsoring. I know my parents' church a few years ago had been sponsoring immigrants, and they would be I guess anyone from the mission field that was deemed worthy is brought over for a sponsored immigrant visa, and then they devote a lot of time and money to, they get them places to live, they get them job training, English lessons, etc., get them all set up to be, a functioning immigrant, just sliding right into society, which, is really admirable, but of course they have to be smart. Adventist, or I'm sure they lose all those benefits, right? So,
do y'all happen to have like a online university system to bring people outside the U.S. to get them a college education? We've pivoted towards that.
I'm sure they do. Okay. I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure they do. Yeah. Okay.
What about missionary work? Who's a missionary?
Yeah, that's I think totally different. There used to be, it was called colportering, COLPORTEUR, I think, colportering, and that was the old school door-to-door knocking, like Mormons and JWs do. You took your great controversy copy and you knocked on people's doors and you tried to either give them or sell them a copy, and you tried to talk to them about Jesus Christ. Same old door-to-door thing that has been done forever. Adventists don't really do that anymore. They've been cold mailing these great controversy books to people, which I'm sure has a very low rate of success. And then mission field, like going either outside the United States or to the native reservations within the United States, anybody can sign up to be a missionary, but there is no requirement to ever serve a mission term. So when we were teenagers and stuff, there really was not that much emphasis made even on going mission to the mission field. It was kind of if you feel the calling, and I never felt the calling, and I always thought it was really horrible and racist, so I didn't. And people go, and it's this very classic colonizing in the name of Jesus, where they go sweeping into an underserved community of any sort, at home or abroad, and they offer English lessons, good old Adventist health care, and education. They build churches, they build hospitals or clinics, they dig wells, and in exchange, they get a bunch of very grateful Adventists because they're offering a lot of things that aren't available.
Yeah. So English lessons and water and sanitation, that's just smart.
Yeah.
We've had that in our
marketing.
Missionary work.
Yeah.
We're moving away from proselyting, but service seems like a really smart way to get converts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And y'all do that.
Absolutely.
So how are you growing in Africa in leaps and bounds if you don't have mandatory missionary work? Who's growing the church in Africa, or is it locally grown?
At this point, because it's been going for so long, I think a lot of it is local.
Fascinating.
There are certain, I can't remember, I know Uganda, I think maybe Ghana. A couple African countries even have very high up Adventist officials in their official government.
That's smart.
Yeah, and they are very active on the local politics as well. So, I mean, some of the African countries are very Adventistized just in general. Places like Jamaica, I think Jamaica is like 70% Adventist or something now. The last time I heard the statistic, I was like, what?
We've got Samoa and Tonga covered, but it sounds like y'all have
Yep.
Jamaica.
We have Jamaica, apparently. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interestingly, Usain Bolt was an Adventist, had to leave the Adventist church so that he could compete.
No. I had no idea. I was going to just say that I in my prep, I noticed y'all don't have like Tom Cruise or John Travolta for Scientologists or Donnie Marie Osmond or Steve Young for the Mormons. Y'all don't have well-known Seventh-day Adventist celebrities.
Right. Because they basically can't do anything that would be celebrated. It's all forbidden by the church, right? So we have
Entertainment?
Oh, hell no. No.
Really? Because
we
dancing's bad.
Dancing's bad. We weren't even allowed to have a television. We weren't allowed to listen to popular music. It's all from the devil. No movies, no anything. Oh, gosh, no. So we have a lot of celebrated ex-Adventists, like Usain Bolt. A couple of NBA basketball players were Magic Johnson was raised Adventist.
No. I did not know that in Michigan. Oh, he was from Michigan. Okay.
I didn't even know where he was from. Apparently he was raised Adventist. Prince, Little Richard.
I thought Prince was Jehovah's Witness.
He did later in life. He became a Jehovah's Witness, but he was raised in his young years as
Little Richard.
And Little Richard. Our famous one right now, who's still Adventist, is Ben Carson.
Okay, wait. Remind me who that is.
He was a presidential candidate who then became a Trump lackey.
Is he black? Mm-hmm. Okay,
yes,
okay.
And he now is. He was.
He was like Attorney General or something.
Yeah,
right?
he was in the first Trump administration. He became Department of Transportation or something.
Okay.
I think
I'm confusing.
And then
people.
he wrote a chapter or more in Project 2025.
Okay. All right.
But, and who else ex-Adventist notable? Famously Black Sabbath, supposedly none of them were Adventists.
Ozzy Osbourne?
Yeah, but they got the name Black Sabbath from some encounter with Adventism somehow, and I'm not sure how that translates. But yeah, you can't really have current Adventists who are famous for anything because it's all forbidden, really.
Google's telling me that Malcolm X was originally a Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes.
And he grew up in Michigan, so that also tracks.
That's right, Malcolm X. And also we have a lovely number in the Adventists, hate for me to say this, but serial killers. Robert Lee Yates was an Adventist deacon while he was murdering and killing people, burying them in his yard where he had all of his little Adventist-raised children running and playing.
David Koresh was a Seventh-day Adventist.
And the Branch Davidians. They were both Adventist, and that was two separate things until Koresh took over the Branch Davidians, but they were all Adventist. And anyone who survived the Branch Davidian debacle, pretty much everyone says most of them went back to Adventist churches. Marcus Wesson, the famous awful family cult guy who ended up killing a lot of his children. Anthill Kids, another really, really awful cult that started Adventist.
I see that RFK's assassin, Sirhan was a Seventh-day Adventist, apparently.
Oh, I forgot about that, too. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. That's funny.
Funny.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Why do cults have really dark true crime kind of connections?
Totally. Makes sense, They just...
We've got our own, of course.
Yeah.
Jody Hildebrand, Ruby Frankie. What?
Ted Bundy.
Yep. And probably all cultures have, serial killers and child molesters.
Yeah.
Okay. Really quickly, what gets you into heaven? Who goes to heaven? What happens with marriages in heaven, and what happens with families in heaven for you guys? Oh,
my goodness. Marriages and families are allowed to stay intact as far as I remember and recall. That is all fine and dandy. Ellen White did write a very nasty letter to someone at one point and told them that God had killed their children here on earth because they were insufficiently giving their tithes and weren't being good enough Adventists. So she believed that God would separate families on earth, apparently. But how do people get into heaven? It's faith by grace, not by works, right? So as long as you ask for forgiveness, you will always be able to get into heaven, is their basic line.
Do non-Adventists make it into heaven?
I believe so. If they have accepted Jesus and the Adventist proselytization before they die, but they didn't have to be officially baptized or anything.
What happens if people didn't even hear about Seventh-day Adventism in their lifetime?
Yes. So the way it was told to me anyway was if they've never heard the message, then they're able to go to heaven if they were good people. But if they've ever heard the message and rejected it, no matter how good they were, they are not.
We have that. It's called a son of perdition. If you've received the witness and then denied it or, turned it down. But then somehow you could be a serial killer, but if you've never heard of it,
right,
somehow you get a pass.
Right.
None of that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you were a serial killer and then you converted at the last minute, suddenly you're okay to go to heaven.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
And what's heaven like for a Seventh-day Adventist? What do you do?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that I remember people talking about in sermons even. We'll all meet at the 8th palm tree down the gold road on the right, inside the heaven's gates. I'll be waiting for all of you. They have this weird little child vision of there are going to be lions and tigers that you can play with. Although they tell you that your pets aren't allowed to go to heaven, but it won't matter because you'll be able to have dolphins as pets if you want. And it's just, but yeah, the streets paved with gold, and there's not a whole lot of harp playing and cloud sitting. I don't know. It's just basically it's just going to be all good and praising Jesus. Everyone's going to sing Jesus praises every day, all day into eternity.
How is that compelling to anyone?
I have no idea. It sounds like absolute hell to me.
And what type of God just wants people spending eternity worshiping and adoring them?
Right.
It's
What kind of a narcissist is it?
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Interesting.
And you'll just have all the food. You can eat anything. You can,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. What a lame heaven. But somehow people don't think it through.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess if you're telling people they cannot have any fun in this life, you have to make it sound like it's this weird, Pollyanna, you can have anything, do anything thing, because since you're telling them they can't have or do anything here, it's the weirdest dynamic.
So you're kind of anti-fun. It's kind of an anti-fun
Very
church.
anti-fun.
I don't think I drew that point out enough, but that sounds characteristic of your religion is fun is bad.
Very. And that was an Ellen White thing, absolutely, for sure. And I can remember even not this last General Conference meeting, because they have it every 4 years. And the one before this, so 6 years ago, people were complaining because the General Conference president literally sat and droned onward for 2 hours reading Ellen White's diets on health about have more fiber, eat more, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just talk about not fun. People flew from all over the world for this conference meeting, and that's what he decided to,
No, our church services can often be very, very boring, and our General Conference talks can be very, very boring. Yeah. And interesting. Yeah, and just to contrast, probably the most joyful part of my upbringing was church dances.
Oh, yeah.
Where in our local congregation, but then across the city, we would have these banger dances every Saturday night.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, where we would dance and sing and get to know each other and have fun.
That's awesome.
Dances were central to my Mormon youth experience.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not having that growing up.
We didn't have anything even equivalent at all. The only wonderful thing that I associate with church itself was the organ music. And we had a really good organist who was literally like Phantom of the Opera. And he would just go off and you could just feel it vibrate in your body. And that's about the only thing that I remember looking forward to about any of our religious anything as a kid, And
is divorce discouraged?
Divorce is highly discouraged. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, I think it was pretty forbidden for a long time, but it is now occurring.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure abortion's bad.
Abortion is bad. Yes. Oh, absolutely. And again, it all weighs, divorce and abortion, of course, weighs heavily on the women. Divorce is usually the woman's fault in some way. She should have just stuck by her man because he was the head of the household. And abortion, of course, is always the woman's thing because she should have just kept her legs closed. So, they ignore all the fine points there.
Corporal punishment?
Oh, yes.
So parents spank kids?
Yes, absolutely. Ellen White advocates it to some extent. Mostly she advocated psychological abuse of children, but Adventists did, like my parents, my mom was definitely a James Dobson reader of, Dare to Discipline and the Strong-Willed Child. I was the strong-willed child. I got beat with hairbrushes and cello bows and, belts. So.
Okay. Well, I think we have a pretty good overview of the Seventh-day Adventists. Well, not just the Seventh-day Adventists. Oh, how wealthy? Do you have any? Is there a number like globally? Our church the Mormon church now is estimated to be somewhere between $300 and $500 billion in assets and wealth. Wow. Do y'all have any idea what your number? Because you say we're in the top 5.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sure those lists say a number, and the numbers are always so absurd to me that I just don't even. I just look at the place number in the list, and I haven't looked at. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
I'm just Googling it right now, and it's okay. So y'all are better than Scientology, nowhere near Mormons. So it's saying 15 to 16 billion worldwide.
Okay, I was going to say maybe 15 to 20 billion, but that was just spitballing.
And not, normally that would sound like a lot of money, but that's chump change.
Chump change to the Mormons.
Yeah.
Especially since you guys are, what did you say, almost half as small as we are? So, I mean,
we have like 4 million active self-identifying members at this point.
Oh, wow.
Now, we claim 17 million.
Okay.
But that's funny numbers.
Okay.
Because 2/3 of the people that convert to the church or are raised in the church leave it.
Okay.
So we're a shrinking church with empty buildings and a stock portfolio that beats most Fortune 500 companies.
Out of control.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because we like billionaires.
You like billionaires.
Unlike you guys. Yeah.
I know.
Being a millionaire.
Need to get with the program.
Yeah.
They're so last year.
Maybe y'all can massage that part of your teaching.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we have to end with money because that's what it really is all about at the end of the day. Is religions or businesses too often. So anyway, what a wonderful 2.5 hours. I learned so much. And are you surprised at the similarities now?
I am shocked. I mean, in a delightful way. It just, again.
And meaningful differences. But
yes.
Way more similarities than differences.
Way more similarities.
Yeah.
It just makes me giggle to no end because that whole we're so special, we're the only ones, blah, 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 is just a bunch of crap. And it's very fun to go through it.
Yeah. The structures are so similar, but there's just some cafeteria menu items that are
exactly
like no dancing for us, no dancing for you.
Yep.
Sunday observance for us, Saturday for you.
Yep.
But like the shame, the obedience, the sexual purity, the guilt, the money, exclusivity, end times, that's all, that's unites us, right?
It does, absolutely.
And the abuse, don't forget the abuse.
And the abuse, which we're going to talk about next time.
Which is a great segue. Okay, so thank you for joining us for part 1 of this epic interview. Melissa, again, I'm going to pronounce your name right, Melissa Duge Spiers.
Look at you.
Thank you so much for educating us. Can you please show us your book one more time?
Absolutely.
And plug it. We'll do that at the beginning and end of it. Well, tell us the book again.
Holy Disobedience, Sex, Sin, and Secrets in the Biggest Church No One Knows.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about that next time.
So next episode will be your story.
Yes.
Yeah, your upbringing and your personal story.
4th generation, now ex-Adventist, all the gruesome details about what it's like to leave and then go through life and discover that you really haven't gotten it out of your system.
Yeah, because it doesn't wash off, as I like to say. Yeah.
It's embedded. Yeah. And unless you really dig it out, it just keeps popping up. It's like, chopping off one head and the next one grows.
And y'all are called Adventists? Is that how you self-describe?
Yep.
Okay.
People call it the SDA Church for short, or Seventh-day Adventists, but we just call them Adventists because it's
You
shorter.
call yourself Adventist.
Yeah.
You would say, I'm an Adventist.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again. And please buy your book, share it with everyone. Is there an audiobook?
There is an audiobook, and I got to read it, and maybe I can talk a little bit about that because it was a really fun experience. I was dreading it, and now it feels so intimate to be able to just like connect with a reader that way and know that they're hearing my voice say my experience. I love it.
How many total hours did you spend recording and re-recording?
The audiobook is 8.5 hours long, I think.
Okay.
And so I probably spent twice that, 16, I would imagine.
20. Yeah.
It was quite intense, which is mostly why I was dreading it. But I didn't know if I was going to cry through half of it. I just didn't know. And so it was somebody told me that they were listening to the audio as they read the print or the ebook copy. And I thought, wow, she said, I'm doing an immersive experience. And I thought, wow,
that's awesome.
Not even sure I could do that, but that's really cool.
That's cool. All right. So buy the book, buy the audiobook, buy them both, read them, listen to them both, share it with friends. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us on part 1 of your Mormon Stories episode.
Yes.
Let's take a little break. Come back. Don't forget, come back, because her story is epic. It's got all of the things, unfortunately, including child sexual abuse cover-ups, which is pretty much every high-demand religion or cult these days as well. So stay tuned. Come back for part 2 of our interview with Melissa Duge Spiers. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories. Please email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. We love your feedback. Please subscribe and like and share this channel. You know that we're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all the different social medias, Spotify. Please give us positive reviews, like us, subscribe to us, share us, etc. And again, we exist through the generosity of our donors. So if you're a donor, thank you. We couldn't do this without you. If you value this content and you're not a donor and you want to see us continue, please go to mormonstories.org/donate and become a monthly donor. We are currently being sued by the Mormon Church. You're laughing. Why in the world would you laugh at that?
Because we were talking about how our churches were so litigious.
Oh, your church is litigious as well? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, in spite of Melissa's laughter, we are being currently sued by the Mormon Church and for alleged trademark and copyright violations, when in reality, it's my personal belief, based on the church's behavior and mediation, that they want to silence, bankrupt, and destroy Mormon Stories Podcast. So if you don't want to see a Goliath bully a small nonprofit with its hundreds of billions of dollars, and you want to support us, you can go to mormonstories.org/legal and donate to our legal defense fund. And it's a $2 or $3 million lawsuit to defend. So I can pretty much guarantee you that your donations are going to go towards our legal fees. So anyway, thanks for supporting us. Tune in next episode for another episode with Melissa. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Thanks to Julie in Brooklyn for all you do behind the scenes. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care.